Does it go students priority first and then it goes through the orders? Or is it through the orders and then the students get priority in each number?
Really? I haven't really interacted with him.
I sent in my
Right before you retired.
Well, I already got it in Berkeley, but you still like maybe you still have to apply for the international.
It isn't any stone, it really isn't any reason that you guys can't reverse this. You know, the thing about HR, you know, it's hard to argue that because I don't know if I fully understand it.
Right.
But I gotta believe it can't be in a district our size. I'm sure we can handle this. You know?
I'm a little bit lost.
I couldn't get any scores. I got one bar up.
I feel like they're at the same time as me. I'm going to Brandeis and Boston.
I want to go to Boston, but I'm going the end of the week.
Yeah, the tours.
You know, they respect you, people make respect you. And when you have all 4 or 5 people,
It's getting really hard. It's getting way harder.
dance crowd, why won't you? You won't even answer me. Oh, damn.
I would just say like, just like plans for everything, like, and like apply to CSU this is like, because it's worth it. You just have to like, yeah, a lot of it. So, like obviously you're all really qualified.
I had notes last time, but I didn't do well last time.
I feel like a lot of them are gone.
Freeze. And then I really choked. It didn't help that it was 11 p.m. and I'd been waiting around. So they were kind of mixture. Overthinking it.
And like obviously it's an accomplishment. Yeah, it's not.
So the race line, but it all like.
I was talking to Claire about that. I was just like, everyone that got it.
I think it's really
Out of state.
But because wait, this is getting way
Yeah, so they're gonna be around.
Okay, it's honestly a gamble. You can't be sure. And
I don't have one. I was president.
I didn't know UCLA doesn't do it on planning or the UC. Like they don't. Which is
I'm going to try again if I can remember.
You are?
I am.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 28th meeting of the Berkeley School Board. If you want to follow along on our online agenda, you can do so on your phone or you can borrow a computer from Ms. Chires. I would like to remind everyone that our board meeting is broadcasting live on YouTube and over the radio at 89.3 FM and on TV on Comcast Cable Channel 33. This means that our meetings and anything captured on video will be archived online and will be online forever. I'll now call the open session of tonight's meeting to order at 7:36 p.m. For record, closed session began at 6:05 p.m. Ms. Chires, please share with the community members present our process for translation of the meeting.
Buenas noches y bienvenidos. Si hay alguien que desea dirigirse a la mesa directiva durante el periodo de comentario público y necesita traducción de inglés al español, favor de hacérmelo saber, ya que le agregaremos más segundos al reloj. Muchas gracias. Director Karen Hempel.
Here.
Director Judy Appel, Vice President Judy Appel.
She's going to be late.
Director Beatriz Leiva Cutler.
Presente.
Director Ty Alper.
Here.
Acting President Uma Nagarajan Swenson.
Here.
Director Josh Daniels.
Here.
We will now approve the agenda. Are there any requested changes?
Yes, Madam President. Item 12.12 on the consent calendar. This has to do with our prior discussions around how BSEP would adjust its programs in light of the budget transfers we've made from the general fund to BSEP. And so I'd like to request that it be discussed between right after the item 15 in light of the need for staff considerations. So 12.12 would go between 15 and 16.
So you're pulling it.
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Or does anyone else have any changes?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, so without objection, the agenda passes. So I will now turn it over to President Daniels to report from closed session.
Currently former President Daniels. Okay, let me pull up. So, sorry. So closed session item 3.1. So the board met in closed session with respect to agenda item number 3.1. The issue is number 1718-03-112400. This is in regards to a student expulsion. Pursuant to Education Code section 48918 subdivision J, is there a motion regarding this item? Okay. I will move to expel the student in this item, although consistent with direction provided to staff in closed session, the expulsion would be suspended for a period of time along with other conditions.
So I'll second the motion.
Where did Liz go?
Oh,
Director Karen Hempel.
yes.
Director Josh Daniels.
Yes.
Director Beatriz Leiva Cutler.
Yes.
Director Ty Alper.
No.
Okay, so it passed 3-1, the motion to expel the student with suspending them first and other conditions. Is there anything else from?
Thank you for asking, Madam President. On item 3.2, this is collective bargaining BCCE negotiations. We discussed the issue. Item 3.3, conference with real property negotiators regarding the use of this room with the city. We did not discuss this item, and that's it.
Great, thank you, Director Daniels. So I will now give a brief overview of this meeting. We are going to be hearing a presentation by students on the Vote 16 initiative and efforts. Then we're going to be talking about the LeConte School renaming update. We'll be discussing, I guess, the item that was pulled from consent, and first reading of policy regarding student interviews by district council, an update on the implementation of next generation science standards, and finally we'll be hearing an update on professional development for certificated teachers. Before we get to public comment, though, we'd like to share tonight's trivia question, which for all of the Berkeley High students in the audience, you will have an advantage. So the process of this is that we're going to be reading it now, and at approximately 9:30, after the LeConte School renaming update, we will solicit answers to the trivia question, and we'll first ask audience members, so you guys should definitely stay because you can win some cool BUSD gear. And then we'll look at responses sent into trivia@berkeley.net. And the intent of this is to educate and engage the public about our schools and our district. Okay. So the question is, Berkeley High School students are known for many things, including their student clubs. The following slide includes a list of 10 Berkeley High School student clubs. Which one is not, at least in the last 4 years, an official student club at Berkeley High School? Beads for Good Deeds, Business Club, Harry Potter Alliance, Humans of Berkeley High School, Liberty Club, Republic of Krishna, Space and Dinosaur Club, Speech Team, Tea Club, and finally Vegan Vegetarian Club. So we will be soliciting answers to that, for that, at approximately 9. Oh yeah, also the list is in the back. So if you want another look at that. The next item on the agenda is 30 minutes for public comment. For tonight, each speaker will be given 3 minutes, and Ms. Chires has already explained the process. As she already explained, we end the meeting with another opportunity for public comment, so if you do not get to speak at the beginning of the meeting, we encourage you to stay and speak at the end. To keep things moving, I'd like to ask that the speaker who's next in line come forward and wait near the lectern, and I apologize in advance if I pronounce anyone's name incorrectly. I know how you feel. Please note that the board does not respond directly to comments or questions made during public comment. Board members, the superintendent, and staff do take notes during public comment and may follow up with the speaker after the meeting. Following the public comment period, there's a period on the agenda during which board members and the superintendent have a couple minutes each to make a comment about whatever they wish. That is the time in which board members can choose to, if they wish, respond to something said in public comment or make any other comment that they wish. We have found that this process keeps our meetings running smoothly, allows for a maximum amount of people to speak during the 30 minutes for public comment, and it ensures compliance with the Brown Act, which doesn't allow for board discussions about items not placed on the meeting agenda. Lastly, I want to remind all speakers that there are children in the audience and they may be listening or watching at home, so please keep that in mind as you speak. Also, if you have complaints about specific district employees, we encourage you to take advantage of our formal complaint process rather than using public comment for that purpose. And again, please remember that anything you say is being broadcast live and will be archived forever. So the first speakers are going to be students from Cragmont Elementary, Mia Breidenbach, Chloe Caruth, and Padma, and we're going to be giving you a block of 6 minutes so you can all come up and speak. And they will be followed by Anna Portnoy.
Hello, my name is Chloe Caruth. I'm a 5th grader at Cragmont. Next year, I will be in middle school. I cry every time that I think that my little brother will not get to make some of the amazing dances we have made in the 5th grade. Dance is a big part of the Cragmont community. We make dances about peace, American history, Black history, and even global warming. Dance at our school is so important to all our students. The kids who feel they do not achieve anything in other subjects achieve a lot in dance. Freedom in doing what you want lets you show creativity. It's fun and a form of exercise. Different styles and cultures are just some of the things that my 4th and 5th grade classmates said when I asked them what they liked about dance. Dance is a big part of the Cragmont community. Please keep dance for the 4th and 5th graders. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mia Breidenbach, and I'm a 5th grader at Cragmont School. I am speaking tonight to ask you to please keep the dance program for 4th and 5th graders at Craigmont. We need dance because it is a very fun exercise and it is a community building activity. It is a community building activity because parents and caregivers come to see the dance assemblies along with the school. Having the dance program is a very fun exercise, and honestly, when you get up to 4th and 5th grade, that's when you're good at dance. My friends and I always have an awesome time making up dances and brainstorming for the assemblies and performances. This year, we got to perform The Battle of Yorktown from Hamilton, a Broadway musical. This took a lot of teamwork to make the dance look great. This wasn't just fun for the girls. It was also fun for the boys, too. Both boys and girls like dance. The next project we will be working on will be informing the students at Craigmont about global warming. We are going to do this by communicating and teaching with dance. Dance is so special because it can be collaborated with art, science, math, and community projects. Craigmont School would not be the same without dance for the 4th and 5th graders. Thank you and good night.
Hi, my name is Padma Liu, and what I want to talk about tonight is that we should keep dance. And there is a lot of reasons. So one is that dance teaches us a lot of things like religions, communities, and how us work together. And a lot of people like dance, not just like, dance is nothing, but we all love dance. And there's only like one dance class each week. And there's like science and music are both 2 periods. And why don't we take one periods out? Because music, we have art and music are like a similar theme, so we can just take out one art class or music class, or we can take out PE because dance is just like PE, but it's more fun. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about.
Great, thank you so much. The next speaker will be Anna Portnoy, followed by Sarah Weaver.
During my time at Berkeley High, I've been a part of a club where I've become close friends with many students in the special ed program. When I spend time with these friends at school, I often see the aides that are there to help students with disabilities, disrespect them, and treat them like they are children. This is a huge issue at Berkeley High that isn't getting enough attention because the people voting for school board issues don't ever see this happening because they don't attend Berkeley High. I am part of Vote 16 because I want to be able to vote for things like more funding for the special ed program, so injustices like these that only students are witnessing don't continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Sarah Weaver, followed by Lori Nixon.
Berkeley High has a long history of sexual harassment and assault. Students affected by this issue have been vocal about the need for direct response and investigation into every harassment claim, but these same students don't feel as though their stories are impacting change in policy regarding this issue. Going forward, the board should take direct action into investigating and responding to these claims, and this is why it's important for Measure Y1 to be implemented, enforced, and supported by the board. Student voices should be valued in school board elections, especially victims of assault, because it's important for people whose personal safety is at stake to feel as though they're being listened to. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Lori Nixon, followed by Shay Tate Dudona.
Good evening. My name is Lori Froggy Nixon. I'm a staff member at King Middle School and a member of the Eon BAM Caucus for the Berkeley Council of Classified Employees, Local 6192. As always, I'm here in solidarity with BHS Stop Harassing, Berkeley High and King Middle School's Black student unions, and any and all staff, students, families fighting for the removal of Donald Trump's regime. Specifically tonight, I'm here in full opposition to the elimination of Berkeley High's safety officer positions. As we have seen in countless other districts across the country, Secretary, the removal of trained counselors and safety monitors paves the way for more police presence on our campuses. Removing the folks trained in de-escalation tactics forces staff to call in law enforcement officers for relatively minor infractions. We as a community cannot say we are committed to reducing violence in our schools if we're allowing this board to make it easier to bring the largest perpetrators of gun violence into our schools. Berkeley High graduate Kayla Moore was murdered by police here in Berkeley while having a mental health crisis. The same police force colluding with Nazis to target Berkeley teachers is the same police force that murdered Stephen Clark in his grandma's backyard for holding a cell phone. Tamir Rice was murdered for playing with a toy. Jordan Davis was murdered for playing music loudly. Trayvon Martin was murdered for wearing a hoodie and carrying Skittles. Our students do all of these things and more. If we're serious about reducing violence against them, we need to save our staff members, trained in de-escalation and counseling, hire more teachers of color, and all of us here and beyond must be more committed to breaking down the stranglehold of white supremacy and misogyny that truly fuel these mass shootings. With my remaining time, I'd like to counter the recent media narrative saying that teachers and school staff didn't sign up for the added political pressure being put on them. Well, myself and so many other BCCE and BFT members did sign up to help our students and communities build their political power. I'm in full support of the Vote 16 implementation and all students and staff building the movement for justice. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Shay Tate Didonna, followed by Cole Huster.
Good evening. My name is Shay Tate Didonna, and I'm the parent of a Rosa Parks kindergarten student. I'm here to make a public comment on the clustering practice at Rosa Parks this year. My child is African American, and our expectation for her when we started kindergarten was for her to have balanced beginnings, which is what all other kindergartners have. It's the same experience that's shared throughout the kindergarten. Only the African American students are being clustered this year. In addition to our family's view that this practice of clustering, they also call it cocooning, and we refer to it as segregation, is not only not what's best for our child, but it's also morally and socially wrong. We have 4 major objections to the implementation of how this was done. The first is communication. We were not told, parents were not communicated with that this would be happening prior to the start of this school year. I believe we received a notice in the October or November newsletter. Our second objection is evidence. We were not given any research or empirical evidence as to why this was done or why they felt it's best for the children. It was also very hurried, so we didn't understand what the rush was. There wasn't a lot of time for understanding or implementation on behalf of the teachers, as I understand it, as well as the parents and students. And our fourth objection is that we were not given the right to opt out. We were not asked our consent. We weren't given the choice. We felt like our child was being experimented with without our consent. So our values as a family, we've told our child to make friends on the basis of shared values and interests, not on the basis of skin color. If she's going to be clustered on anything, we'd prefer it be academics. Our grade is currently reading at a level B, and our child is reading at level H or I. So if she's going to be clustered for next year on the basis of skin color rather than academics, we have strong concerns about this. I stand before you today. It's not just my opinion. It's the opinion of our family and our community. My wife's African American as well. My daughter's family, friends, loved ones, godparents, grandparents, all share this view. And her grandmother was bused for desegregation and feels that she experienced that and would not like her child to. So thank you.
Thank you. We now have Cole Huster, followed by Kinshasa Taylor.
Good evening. My name is Cole Huster, and I'm a junior at Berkeley High School. In October, the Berkeley High School community was rocked when a student-created Instagram page surfaced containing racist, xenophobic, homophobic, and anti-Semitic posts. Much of the student body was upset with the lack of transparency surrounding the consequences for the students involved and the outdated social media policies that the district held. I'm a part of Vote 16 because I believe that the student body deserves an outlet for their voice. And the policies written for the tech and culture of the 1990s are no longer applicable to our modern society. Our beliefs should be represented on the school board, and having a role in elections will not only help amplify our voices, but will also teach civic engagement from a young age. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Kinshasa Taylor, followed by Lauren Breitenbach.
Good evening. My name is Conchasa Taylor. As of today, I am a former parent of 2 BUSD students, and I'm also a commissioner in the city. Over the past 5 weeks, my children have not been in school as a result of school bullying by a student who, at the beginning of the school year, sexually assaulted my child by twisting her nipples, and I quote, "When I received a phone call while out of town from school staff, I was very disheartened." I notified staff of this incident, and as of today, this video of the cyberbullying that occurred when I received a phone call from my child on February 20th has not been looked at by anyone in the district except for, Dana Clark this past Friday, and this is after I met with Tammy Rose. So I'm here tonight because I want you all to understand the type of cyberbullying that's going on with students that are 11 years old. And this is what...
But if you talk all this shit, say it to my face, because when you were saying all this shit, you were saying it to my face at school. So, and then, if you know you're gonna get your ass beat, then you might want to shut the fuck up. Go to the school page, and down below, and roast the fuck out of her with her ugly ass. Oh yeah, she got a little ugly little sister. They supposed to be twins. Named the Johnson twins.
So after my child and the school contacted me and I heard this video and I saw it, my niece showed it to me. I was out of town at this time on the 20th for business. Showed me this video and my kid told me, "Mom, we're afraid to go to school tomorrow because we're gonna get our head knocked off." This is the same young lady that has harassed my children in the bathroom, and as I stated earlier, the same child the second week of school that walked up to my other twin and twisted her nipples, and nothing happened except for the restorative justice situation, or whatever you guys call the restorative justice. I don't know what to call it. I call it pacifying. After 5 weeks, I received an email from Tammy Rose this past Thursday saying that I declined any offers to resolve this situation. And at that time, Tammy had not and would not look at the video that I was contacted by the school to see that my child had experienced cyberbullying over the weekend. I have filed a formal complaint, and as I stated, my children are now students at Albany Middle School as a result of this young lady, as you heard, informing kids from other schools who chimed in if my children transferred to King or Willard, they would also do something to my kids. So you guys need to do something about cyberbullying. You need to do something about sexual harassment, because I, as a commissioner of this city, should not have to drive to another city that I serve for my kids to be educated properly and safe. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now have Lauren Breidenbach, followed by Katush Struish.
Good evening. My name is Monica Chang. I have a third grader at Cragmont Elementary, so I speak alongside these students, parents, and teachers to save dance at Cragmont. I cannot speak enough about how much Nathan loves dance. When I ask him about his day, normally I get it was good, but whenever there's dance, he can go on and on and on. Aside from being a parent of a child that loves dance, I am also an employee with San Francisco Ballet, and I can tell you from that perspective and standpoint, as I converse with my colleagues about the positive impact of dance, I'm sure you're aware, I can speak to, through dance, children learn discipline and concentration. They learn commitment. They learn critical thinking skills, which develops their heightened memory and sequencing skills. They learn teamwork, and they learn to manage expectations. They set goals, they learn patience, and they learn perseverance. And not to mention that the art of dance crosses cultural, socioeconomic, and language barriers, where words have a limit and can only go so far. Dance speaks our heart, and it can cross multiple boundaries. So it's my hope that you would take these words into consideration and that you would continue to equip our children with this empowerment. We teach our children to march, to protest. Why not teach them to dance as a form of expression as well? And so I hope that with this, you can stand with us. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Katush Strish, followed by Talia Stendy.
Hi, I'm Katush Strich, and I'm a junior at Berkeley High. I support Vote 16 because it gives students a way to have their voices heard. Recently, Berkeley High School created 2 gender-neutral restrooms. This was a step in the right direction, but the problem is not solved. These bathrooms are often locked, and 2 individual stalls is not nearly enough for all students. Many people at Berkeley High, myself included, do not have access to a restroom we can safely and comfortably use. This is an issue that directly impacts students, and we have no say in it. That's why I stand with Vote 16. The law has been passed, but we need your help to implement it. We need to actually be able to vote so that we can elect representatives who will fight for the causes that we, as students, care deeply about. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Talia Stendy, followed by Rosemary Hannon.
Hi, my name is Talia Stender, and I'm here to speak about an incident of bullying. Recently, Jayla and Taylor Johnson were sexually harassed and cyberbullied at Longfellow Middle School. And when their mother, Kinshasa Taylor, got called by an administrator, one of the first things she got asked was, "Do you live in Berkeley?" And it came across as really rude and disrespectful. And I think that we need to treat the concerns of parents and students with respect and take bullying seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Rosemary Hannon, followed by Olivia Fackner-Lewis.
I'm ceding my time to Stephanie Wood.
Good evening. My child already spoke, and I'm not really prepared, but I'm going to just read a few quick notes. I think what I'm trying to get across to you is that it would be great if each site could have a little bit of autonomy on their prep time. I know that it's nice if there can be some uniformity across the district, but at the same time, I feel like each community is a little bit different. And one of the things that makes Craigmont special is the dance program. And as Monica already said, sorry, I'm a little nervous because I wasn't prepared to talk. There are a lot of great things about the program that we have at Craigmont. The dance program fosters teamwork, which is really important. It's structured and focused athletic activity that the kids get that they just absolutely love. It levels the playing field for girls and for boys. It increases attendance because we know that when there are these extra activities besides just, math and things that some kids don't do as well in, that they want to come to school to perform in things like dance. It really builds a community. I've been at Craigmont since 2008, and it brings, things like dance bring everyone to the school. So when we have performances, you get parents from all across Berkeley that come to the school to see their children perform. It's culturally responsive, as Monica already spoke to, because you're teaching things that are different from math and reading, so you're getting a lot of different cultures and expression of different people within those dance lessons. And frankly, it's just something that Craigmont is extremely proud of. The program has been there since before I was at Craigmont with my kids. And we already went through a situation a few years ago where we lost a very beloved art teacher that was important to us. And it kind of dismantled the art program that we had at the school. And to see something happening like that to the dance program is really, it's disheartening. And it feels a little demoralizing to the community to see that go away. So I hope that you will reconsider and you'll allow our teachers who know so much about how to teach the students and what they need to have some autonomy in choosing the prep time that's most important to the school. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Olivia Fackner-Lewis, followed by Claire Dugan.
Hi, my name is Olivia Fackner-Lewis, and I'm a junior at Berkeley High School. As many of you may know, the Berkeley High School pool heater broke in January of this year. The school was made aware of this problem promptly, yet the pool wasn't fixed until the end of February. This prevented the swim team from having practice for almost a full month of the short 3-month season. Athletics are a vital part to many students' success in school, providing an outlet to de-stress after school, creating a place for kids to make new friends, and find a small community within Berkeley High. The elongation of the process to fix the pool discouraged many people from joining the team and prevented our full potential for improvement. It was disheartening to feel as a student that I had no voice and that the school and school board wasn't listening to us and our concerns. As students, we wanted to know what was going on, and the school board should have reached out to us to let us know of the procedures being taken. Students need a voice in the things that affect them, and being able to vote for school board members that we feel represent us and will create the change that we want to see is necessary. The student voice should matter, and this is why I'm a part of Vote 16. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Claire Dugan, followed by Ruby McDonald, and that will be our second to last.
My name is Claire Dugan. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Cragmont. We presented a proposal of having 1 science prep, 2 music preps, and 1 dance prep instead of the district's mandate of 2 music and 2 science preps. Our teachers are very committed to making sure science is taught. 2 of our upper grade teachers have science degrees. I have a degree in geology. Jill Moniz has a degree in biology. We already do a great deal of science. We go on a geological field trip to Sibley every year. Jill has animals coming into her classroom. She works at the San Francisco Zoo every summer, so she has those connections. We're not worried about science. This decision was made with no input at all from anybody at Cragmont. That's not how you run a school district. That's not how you make good decisions. We followed procedures to give our input. We went to Maggie Riddle with our proposal that was approved by the whole staff. Our proposal was rejected. We're coming to you. We really need you to reverse the decision of 2 science and 2 music preps. You've heard so much about why dance is important. I won't add to that except to say you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. If you're telling us you want culturally responsive curriculum, how can you take away our dance? How can you say both of those things? We've attempted to communicate. It's so sad that we have received so few responses to our emails. People don't even respond. And the ones who do are running for office. So that's all I have to say. I just need someone to wake up and see that a big mistake's being made. It was a mistake, but we can fix it. And I hope you will. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Ruby McDonald, followed by our final speaker of the night, Christine Weinrich.
Good evening, board members. My name is Ruby McDonald, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, and Emeryville. As Mr. President Daniel is smiling because I've spoken to many of you as I have to him. So I have been working on increasing voter registration in Berkeley since 2015, particularly with respect to Berkeley High School, and we've had some rough spots, but we were very hopeful when the students actually of Vote 16 were so organized in bringing this campaign to a successful victory. Then the question was implementation, and unfortunately, at that time, I kind of left that project to work on something else. But before I left, it seemed to me that after having talked to Registrar Cynthia Cornejo at the Alameda County Registrar's Office, that there was some problem with funding. Now, this is kind of unfair. Maybe I'm segueing to a topic which really addresses the question of funding. That is to say, the ballot measure that the League of Women Voters of California and its over 200 organizations are trying to put on the ballot for November 2018 to have change in Proposition 13 for large businesses to be reassessed every 3 years, which will bring in up to $10 billion per year for schools and for local communities. It seems that various projects, not just Vote 16, but the dance project, the question of monitoring sex abuse in the schools, so many things, which even a well-managed district like Berkeley Unified School District has been caught short on in these times of great need for so many even unanticipated problems. So I'm very supportive of Vote 16, as you should be, and as well as others. And I feel that by backing this measure, schools and communities first, this could really be an important, at least partial solution to the problems that face us and communities all over California. Thanks very much.
Thank you. We will now hear from our final speaker of tonight, Christine Wenrich.
I am Christine, right? I'm Christine Wenrich, Secretary of the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville, and I'm here to support the Vote 16 effort. I'm hoping that the school board finds a way to fund the ballots, and it seems that there are plenty of people to organize it.
Thank you. That now concludes this public comment period. Thank you to everyone who came to speak. If you did not get to speak, please remember that there's an extended public comment period at the end of the meeting. And additionally, you can always email the board directly at boardoфed@berkeley.net, and/or you can contact us individually. Our information is posted online at www.berkeley.net/school-board. Now there's an opportunity to hear from our unions. Each union has 5 minutes to address the board on issues of its choosing. Are there any union reps here? Cool.
Good evening, President. I'm going to mess your name up. Good evening, Student President, and to our school board members and to our listening public. My name is Paula Phillips. I'm the president of the Berkeley Council of Classified Employees. And this past weekend, I participated in the March for Our Lives in Santa Ana. It was an amazing experience to see our youth and people from all walks of life united against gun violence and mass shootings in our country. But tonight I'm here to speak to you about the elimination, I'm here to speak to you against the resolution to eliminate 2 safety officer positions at Berkeley High School. And I want you to know that our students are the most important persons on our campuses, especially at Berkeley High School, well, throughout the district. The elimination of 2 school safety officer positions at Berkeley High School will put our students in a precarious and unsafe situation. Safety officers, the safety officer's role is designed and was developed to promote campuses that are free from violence and crime. Their primary role is to serve the campus community using methods that are consistent with the educational philosophy of the campus. They must be familiar with how to protect students, staff, and property. While most peace officers have the authority to enforce all local laws on or about campuses, the safety officer is assigned to protect students, staff, and property on the campus. While their primary role is prevention, they should be visible to discourage those who might consider violating campus rules or committing acts of violence on campus. With the passage of Senate Bill 1626 in 1998, safety, security officers, safety and student welfare employees working 20 hours or more are required to complete a certified training. Ed Code Section 38001.5 reinforces this fact. With student safety being the law according to the Ed Code, please tell our students at Berkeley High why their safety is not the highest priority at Berkeley High. Please tell them why clerical staff and uncertified substitute employees are being used to protect the campus at Berkeley High. Please tell them why Berkeley High administration and this school board are allowing untrained, uncertified staff to protect the most important persons at Berkeley High. Our students are required to have skilled and certified safety officers to protect them. Our skilled and certified safety officers are required to have skilled and certified co-workers to help them apprehend suspects in violent situations. To have one safety officer patrol the perimeter of the school while school is in session is unacceptable. Even police who are trained to apprehend criminal suspects do not work alone. Before you vote to approve the elimination of 2 safety officers at Berkeley High School, I ask you this one question. Is Berkeley High really prepared to protect the most important persons on its campus? I participated in the ALICE training during the last professional development, and the skill and level that was displayed during the mock shootings was impressive. So during one of the mock shootings, an officer came in, entered the door with a makeshift semi-assault weapon. During that mock simulation, no one was hit with a nerd butt pellet. During the second mock situation, the gun was given to Tammy Rose. They weren't expecting her to have the gun, but when she pulled the gun out, only one person was hit. Those are our skilled and certified safety officers. They deserve to have skilled and certified co-workers alongside of them to protect our most valued persons at Berkeley High. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other union reps here? No? Okay. So now there's an opportunity to hear comments from our district committees. Each committee has 5 minutes to address the board on issues under its purview. Is there anyone here from a district committee who'd like to speak? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, guess not. So now there is time for board members and the superintendent. Each of us will have 3 minutes. Would anyone like to start?
I'll start.
Okay, Director.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the students who came for both Cragmont and the students, because your voice does matter, and it's good to hear students come out, and also to the Berkeley High students, and the vote counts. It certainly does, and I praise you for coming out and taking the banner and moving and increasing our voters out there, which will be the young millennials. So thank you for doing that. And it always pains me to hear that there's things going on in our schools that shouldn't be going on. And so I certainly hope our staff will, and I'm confident that our staff will be addressing these issues, because those are concerning. I have office hours on April 9th from 4:30 to 6 o'clock at Casa Latina. I also wanted to announce, and if students don't know, there is a contest going on for Cesar Chavez Dolores Huerta Commemorative Committee. It's an essay poetry poster contest, March 11th through April 30th. There'll be awards for the students who participate in doing an essay, poetry, or poster contest. So we hope. We've distributed over 500 books to our schools, to the elementary, middle, and the high school. So I hope you will participate. And there's one person that has come out to our school, Silvia Mendez. Reina Grande wrote the book, The Distance Between Us, and it's about her immigrant experience, both as an undocumented student in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Nobody? Okay, Director Hempel.
First of all, I want to apologize. I'm not feeling very well today, so I'm hoping to stay long enough to hear the students talk about Vote 16, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to stay too much longer than that. Anyway, I just wanted to mention a few things. One is the 50th anniversary committee, the 50th anniversary of the African American Studies Department. We're meeting, getting ready to start or planning that celebration. That'll be the 18-19 school year. It'll be the 50th anniversary of the African American Studies Department, which is the only African American Studies department at a high school known in the United States. So we're really looking forward to that celebration. And it will be a look back at the past, but also looking at the present and the future of the relevance of the department for students in the community. Also, last Thursday at Longfellow was the Black History Oratorial Contest, Fest, and it was specifically done in March because Black history is not limited to just one month of the year, but is a year-long, always issue to be kept in the forefront of our brains. And we had wonderful participation, particularly from our elementary schools. I really want to applaud the principals, school site personnel, and the family outreach workers. Really amazing turnout from particularly our elementary schools. Good representation from our middle schools, and maybe we'll see more from our high schools in the future. But we had everything such as a speech by Haile Selassie, original spoken word about being Afro-Latina, several renditions of Still I Rise. And those of you who were there are smiling because there were maybe 5 or 6 of those, all good. And so it was really amazing. Particularly, I was impressed by how many of our elementary schools actually took the time to not just write, but memorize things that they did originally. So I just want to mention that on April 12th, at the Berkeley Community Theater will be the annual celebration of Black Student Excellence that's also sponsored by the African American Studies Department. This is when every year we celebrate excellence in our Black students and give awards for students who have 3.0s, 3.5s, and 4.0s. And every year, there's quite a few students that are recognized for those academic efforts. And so I look forward to that this year. My next office hours will be April 14th, so a while from now. But if you contact me at karenhemphill@berkeley.net, and you can't make April 14th, I do have the opportunity to meet separately with you. And I think that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hemphill. Vice President of Health.
Thank you, Uma, and I apologize for coming in late. I wanted to just talk about I want to talk about the March for Our Lives, but I also want to talk about the fact that we're coming upon the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. And I recently was watching a show that was on, I think it was on NBC, and it was called, I was looking for it, it's like, I think called something like Faith and Fury, and it's about it was about how strategic Martin Luther King was in the use of media as a part of his, the civil rights movement, not just him, obviously, the team around him. And one of the things that I thought about in seeing that film, and then really listening very closely to a lot of the message that the young people were sending for the March for Our Lives, was just that there's a lot of parallels both in the problems that persist, as well as in the power of the people who are working to speak truth to power. And I just wanted to appreciate specifically that that our students had the ability in this, over just the last month, to turn the conversation about school shootings, about gun control, from just school shootings in a school where that was predominantly white, where a lot of white people were killed. There's a lot of uproar, to really bringing in a much more complex message about the impact of gun violence on communities, and particularly communities of color. And I just don't think we would have seen that in a adult-led movement in a month. I was really struck by it because I watched the coverage of a lot of the different a lot of different marches, and I saw that message pretty consistently across the board. I actually went to the march in Richmond. There was a march in Richmond, March for Our Lives, and there was over 1,000 people there, which for that community was really large, and it was a similar message. And in fact, when they talked about the people who had lost their lives to gun violence, they did not just include, obviously, school shootings, because there hasn't been one, but the many, many people and young people of color who've lost their lives to gun violence in Richmond. So there's no kind of period, there's no final point I want to make. I just want people to acknowledge the assassination, the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King, and maybe take some time over the next week to really learn more about that movement and take from it lessons that can help us make change into the future.
Thank you. Director Alper, no. Director Daniels?
Just want to say that I could get used to this, so this may not be a one-time thing. That's all I got to say.
Great. Superintendent? Okay, I guess I'll talk. Quickly, I am super impressed by student civic engagement recently. I went to the March for Our Lives over the weekend, and a couple of 6th graders spoke there so eloquently about the impact that gun violence has had on them and on their community, and it was it was amazing. And everyone here, we had so many BUSD students speak today, which was just awesome to see. And Vote 16, you guys are all super inspiring, so I'd just like to thank you all for putting in the amazing work that you've done. And also, quickly, ASB elections just happened at Berkeley High, so the person who will be replacing me next year was chosen, or was voted on, I guess, Arvin Hariri, so I'd just like to quickly congratulate him. Superintendent?
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge Mr. V. Mr. V, can you stand up? I just want to acknowledge him for the amazing job he's done with ASB and also other groups at the high school. I had the opportunity to meet quite a few of them, and they gave me, some input in terms of the LCAP. And so I just want to acknowledge you and the work that you've done, but I also want to acknowledge the students. I was pretty amazed by what you came up with, and I'm going to use that information to address some of the needs of our students. And I also want to acknowledge the Berkeley BTEC as well. I had the opportunity to talk to those students, and they gave me some good ideas and things that we should consider. So I want to acknowledge them as well. So thank you.
Okay, great. So I think that concludes board comment. Could I have a motion to approve the consent calendar now as amended?
So moved.
Second, anyone? Okay, any objections? Okay, it passes without objection. Moving into item number 13, which is the update on Vote 16 efforts, I'll turn it over to Director Daniels to introduce this.
Thank you, Madam President. So this is an update on, you guys can come up now, efforts to sort of implement portions of Vote 16, which is connected to Measure Y1 from the 2016 election. And the presentation we are going to hear will be primarily from students at Berkeley High, many of the students who are behind the Measure Y1 effort, and they're going to give us an update on what they've been doing at our comprehensive high school.
Thank you. I just want to, before we start, acknowledge Uma. She's doing a magnificent job. It's been an absolute honor to be represented by her, and in the last election, Berkeley High couldn't have chosen anyone better to do so, and she's done it with such grace throughout this year, and she is an individual who truly represents the voices of Berkeley High, and so I hope to see that tradition continued in future years. So we are Vote 16. My name is Samelia. I'm a student in BIHS. I'm a senior as well at Berkeley High School, and I've been a part of Vote 16 since the very beginning in my sophomore year.
I'm Ruby Wilkes. I'm a senior in AC, and I've been a part of Vote 16 since 2017.
I'm Oliver Kasdan, and like Samelia Rogers, I have been in Vote 16 since sophomore year.
Oh, hi. I'm Melina Fike. I'm a junior in CAS, and I've been involved in Vote 16 since 2016.
Hi, I'm Kyla. I'm a senior in AC. We just want to thank you for your continued support on the measure. Your continued support on the measure, and we're here to tell you what we've been doing to get our youth more enfranchised and what we've been doing to work towards the implementation of the measure Y1 that we've passed. Yeah. So now we're going to hear from Oliver Kasdan.
So just to start out, a quick overview of Vote 16. So we started in 2015 with a sole goal of increasing civic engagement within Berkeley. We didn't have a set plan. We didn't know exactly what we do, but we knew that that's what we wanted to focus on. And the further we got in, the more we started to notice that when we had marches, when we had protests, all these huge events at Berkeley High about racist comments, certain events that bothered the student body, we didn't have the weight that we would have liked to, both with the school board and with administration. So we found that the best thing that we could be doing with our time was having more of a force behind our voice and giving us the right to vote was the best avenue that we found. And that's how Vote 16 started.
Right. And I want to add, just because of the amazing voices that we heard during public comment, and there's so many other narratives of students at Berkeley High that are really strong, specifically because we're students and specifically because we're inside the schools and we have a lot of informed perspectives because of those reasons. And I think that's why student activism is really strong and important, is because that's our main outlet for projecting our voices.
Okay, so Vote 16 is a group of civically engaged Berkeley High students, and in 2016 we passed Measure Y1 with over 70% of voter support, which allowed 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in school board elections. So we believe that the city measure is a big step in the right direction for this city and for the nation as a whole. It's really important to recognize that Berkeley is the first city on the West Coast and the biggest city in the nation to do this. We are trailblazers that has gone on and on in Berkeley. We've seen that generation after generation, and we understand that Berkeley is continually civically engaged, just based on the sheer quantity of people that come to these meetings and city council meetings to speak, and how long you sit here each time you're here. It really shows that the constituents in Berkeley care, and this is no exception for young people our age, 16 and up. We really want to acknowledge that we're having the same conversations in our communities. We are having the same conversations about safety officers, and every issue that you guys talk about here, we talk about in our classrooms and in our social groups, but these are two parallel conversations. There's no point of intersection, and we believe that students voting is the place for this. As a student, I went to LeConte, I went to Longfellow, and now I'm at Berkeley High. I sit here resonating with the students talking about the renaming of LeConte. I sit here resonating with the students talking about sexual harassment at Berkeley High, and I sit here resonating with students here from Berkeley High talking about voting rights. These conversations happen in our households and within our communities as students, unprompted by adults and prompted on our own desire. And we believe that voting is simply the best way for the school board and the students to start having this dialogue beyond public comment. The reality is that there's no one who knows the district better from the inside out than the students who've experienced it themselves. By 16 years old, you've been through the district, you understand what it means to be a student here, and you understand the trials and tribulations, as well as the successes that come out of your work and your jurisdiction as the school board. And so we really want to just highlight this and really show that this is a movement that can spread. Berkeley can not only be the first city to pass such a ballot, but can be the first city to implement it, to show, to create data that it works, that it enfranchises young people of all backgrounds, students whose families are not represented otherwise in regular constituencies, and for many other reasons. But we hope that you will continue to support us as we continue this uphill fight. So now we're going to hear from students who have joined us this year, and they're just going to talk about that. So you guys can come up. And
All right. So at the present time,
if you want, you can go to that mic if it's easier.
So at the present time, we're focusing on registering as many young people as possible, and we're focusing on Berkeley High School students. We've planned classroom visits with teachers and given presentations on the importance of youth civic engagement. We've also gone to school events and set up tables, registering and pre-registering students to vote. One of the places that we've done this is at the recent walkout for our school, where we helped young people find an outlet for their voice and help allow them to hold their representatives accountable by registering to vote.
Students care about issues and decisions impacting them. By registering people, we've made it possible for them to direct how these issues are resolved. Now we have a say. And getting young adults registered at this age sets them up for a life of civic engagement. Students are passionate about the issues we currently face, and with a vote, our views can be heard. Many students are excited to vote. They want to participate in democracy, and by registering them, we've given them that ability.
So through Vote 16, I've had the opportunity to register a lot of people to vote and to advocate for youth civic engagement. And I've participated in these classroom visits where we go around and we register our peers to vote. And I've seen firsthand just how excited and how eager my peers are to engage in our democracy and to have their voices heard. And so, I joined Vote 16 to give these people a voice. And through this movement, I've been able to empower other people and to be empowered myself.
Thanks. So to introduce myself, my name is Adina Ishii. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville. You heard from a couple of our members earlier. Thank you so much for including me in this presentation. As the youngest member, or rather the youngest president of the League of Women Voters in our 106-year history, I think it's so important that we get youth involved. And like the students have already said, getting involved with voting at an earlier age means that they're more likely to vote as they get older. And this issue is incredibly important to the League, and we are really lucky that they wanted to partner with us. We've been collaborating with them to create a 3-part plan: voter registration, voter education, and also get out the vote efforts. Currently, we're working on voter registration, as the students have mentioned. And since the League already puts on pro-con forums and also candidate forums, we would be able to have candidate forums for them so that they would be educated about the school board members that they would be voting for. Also, for the Get Out the Vote effort, we won a grant that would allow us to do text reminders to them to help stay in touch and make sure that they know when things are coming up, making sure that they're registered to vote on time, things like that. And also, the last thing I really want to say is just how honored I've been to work with these students. They are absolutely incredible. They're so incredibly organized. They're so smart. They're so on top of things. They speak so eloquently. And I'm just incredibly impressed and feel very lucky that I've gone to work with them.
So, like Cole and Katush said, we've been registering people to vote. In the last 4 weeks, we registered over 347 students. At one point after the walkout, when there were many empowering speeches about youth civic engagement and young people voting, we registered roughly a person a minute for an hour. So students really are excited to go out and vote. So when we go into classrooms, like somebody's already said, students are really excited to vote. And we want to show that in the future senior data and show that Berkeley High students, and especially seniors, are really excited, civically engaged students who are excited to go out into the world and vote, or to show a lack thereof and show that we need to do more to get students registered to vote, like Voter Registration Week, which will give you all materials to outline and how to implement that moving forward. We really just want more students to register to vote and want to tell you all that students really are excited to vote.
And so the efforts we've taken towards these steps is every senior, upon exiting Berkeley High, in order to receive graduation tickets, has to fill out kind of a survey, kind of a reflection form for the staff of Berkeley High School. And we've added 2 questions onto that form. 1, are you registered to vote? And 2, did you register to vote through a means of Berkeley High? So whether that be an activism club or an effort by the school to do so. And this is really important to us so that when we're gone and we're in college and we're off doing other things, we can see that Berkeley High has either grown in its amount of young people registered by the age of 18 and by graduation, or there's work that needs to be done. And we, as students here, some of us graduating this year, some of us graduating next year, are hoping to establish not only a foundation in our group as a body, but a foundation in Berkeley High in which voting is a part of our culture and is a part of our expectations for each graduating class. And so we've done this in collaboration with the counselors to put this on the form, and we hope to continue to present that data in future years as it comes about.
So this is where we're reaching out to you to ask for help. As you know, the county, we're having trouble with the county, and we feel that if you were to send a letter expressing and encouraging your support for Measure Y1, that the necessary funds and the necessary planning would be put into place. Additionally, as previous speakers have mentioned, we would like to have a candidate forum for students to become more informed voters. This isn't necessarily only about Measure Y1 and getting the youth to vote, but this is just getting them more interested in voting as a whole, regardless of whether or not they vote for the school board. We all have this in writing as well, so don't worry about that. We'll give that to you at the end of the meeting.
We have a letter all drafted.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Ready to go.
And then just quickly to touch on our next steps as a group as Vote 16, a lot of us are graduating, but we do have a strong group of members who are here to carry on the movement through coming years. I think it's important to note that this isn't an isolated movement. We're not just doing this in Berkeley. There's a lot of various cities throughout the United States who have started similar Vote 16 campaigns on their own. But then in addition to that, there are a lot of cities throughout California who are also doing Vote 16 campaigns, specifically because they've seen that the work that we've done in Berkeley and have become inspired to do it in their own cities. And so as a group, we've been working with those cities really personally and really closely, offering ourselves as resources and helping them along the way. To hopefully have more successful Vote 16 campaigns in other cities all across the state and the country.
Matter of fact, this morning I just started working with Ventura County. So, we also just kind of want to highlight that this is a growing movement. We did attempt a statewide bill that you so generously endorsed, and that didn't pass. And I think in the next midterm election, we're going to see a turn in the legislature, and hopefully in the future we will be able to pass such a bill, but there's really a very limited set of data there, and we hope that Berkeley in the future can be a standout and be a contributing set of data for future legislature. And we really just want to kind of recognize that every single one of you, there's something in your values that is reflected in this movement to get young people to vote. You have constituents, you have young people in your areas who have the similar values to you regarding the policies that you're passing, and there is such a desire to vote, and we want to uphold the civic duty of getting young people engaged in this way, and we hope that you will continue to support us in our endeavors.
So hopefully we've left you plenty of time to ask us any questions. We know a lot about it. Oh, sorry. Hopefully we've left you enough time to ask us lots of questions. We're all very knowledgeable. Yeah.
So just quickly before I turn it over to questions, I'd like to thank you guys for your very eloquent and effective presentation, and just for in general, this whole entire effort is really amazing. So Director Alper.
Yeah, thank you. I second that. It was incredibly impressive, and I'm really grateful for all your advocacy and your work. And in my household, we're now Teen Vogue subscribers, so I wanted to congratulate Ms. Fike on her piece in Teen Vogue, which was...
If you didn't catch that, Melina wrote a wonderful piece for Teen Vogue about voting that got published, so you should check it out.
It was very cool. We got 2 subscriptions to Teen Vogue in our household by accident. So Mike, I think it was you, Mr. Kazan, who said that we know about the problems of the county, but actually I don't. So I'm wondering if someone can explain to us what's going on at the county, what advocacy is needed in order to make this happen, hopefully for 2018, if not for 2020, but what's the holdup?
Actually, I'm sure Josh can speak to this as well, but I will say that we've been trying to reach out to the county registrar of voters, and what they were concerned about is whether the Secretary of State's office would allow them to do that. And so I don't know, maybe Josh, do you want to take us from here, because you've actually connected the dots from there?
So I think because this is new, I think there's a lot of check with somebody else. Not necessarily opposition, but just like check with somebody else. So when the league and the students reached out to the county, they said, well, we don't know if the Secretary of State's okay with that. So then I reached out to the county, and they said, well, talk to the county. Reached out to the Secretary of State, and they said, talk to the county. So I think that the students came up with the idea of sort of writing a letter and pushing a little bit more directly and reacting or talking with the county registrar. So I think that makes a lot of sense, and letting them know that the Secretary of State did say, at least one of his staff members said, that at this time they're comfortable with this proceeding. So that was a positive sign, and hopefully will allow us to make some movement in that direction. Okay.
Well, you'll have learned much about bureaucracy by the time we get this implemented. But if there's any, I fully support anything this board can do to make it happen, if possible, for 2018.
Thank you. Also, I forgot to mention this completely. I meant to earlier, but just for the purpose of efficiency this meeting, the way that I'm going to be formatting discussion so that everyone on the board's voice gets to be heard is we're just going to be going down the line asking questions. Then once everyone's had a chance, we can open it up. And we can reverse order, I guess. Okay. Director LeConte.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed your presentation very much. It was very on target. It's exactly what needs to happen all over the nation. And I'm so happy that it's started here in Berkeley because of you. I'm concerned about passing the baton and how do we keep that momentum here in Berkeley. But also, we have other students that are Berkeley residents that are not part of Berkeley High. What kind of recruitment is being utilized to recruit the students at St. Mary's, at other private schools that are even around us?
Absolutely. So we kind of talked a little bit about registering students to vote. And so when we do go into classrooms, that includes students who don't live in Berkeley. It includes students who live in Contra Costa and Alameda County. In terms of recruitment, we obviously are hoping that once the measure passes, we can do a lot of get out the vote at those schools and at those different places. In terms of recruiting for an organization, it's not something we've thought a lot about because we're really working on even just simply diversifying within our own school, but it's something we will definitely take into consideration in the future.
Also, when students from other schools register to vote, if they check vote by mail, and how we think it'll likely end up working out is that we'll mail students who are 16 and 17 their ballots, then they'll get the ballots in the mail if they've pre-registered to vote, so that'll go.
It's more the recruitment of other students in other schools here in Berkeley that live here in Berkeley.
Go to education.
But don't go to Berkeley High.
Absolutely. We do have a few contacts at Head Royce, and just with this general uprising and activism, we are just trying to find those connections and make connections through our other kind of pathways and activities that we do. And hopefully it's something we will continue to work on. And I know that just as in terms of voting in those schools, Adina mentioned the league got a grant for this texting service, so it really is about making just one interaction and following that up with continual interaction through technology.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you. I agree. You made an excellent presentation, and I just hope that some of our staff were watching because you did such a great job. I wanted to ask you something about the city. So have you had any interaction at all with the city government? And how has that gone for you?
Are you referring to city council?
City council, city manager, we have a clerk's office here, yeah.
So the League of Women Voters had, is this on? I don't think it's on.
It was before. I tried going right into it. It's a needle, yeah.
It says it's on. Well, the League of Women Voters had a meeting with the city clerk's office as well. And I did let them know about the email that Josh received, and they're on board. It's sort of just like, okay, we're waiting to hear what's next kind of thing.
And also when we were initially introducing our state bill, the city council endorsed it unanimously, so we do have their support.
Yeah, so I just share, I guess, and to some extent echo, I feel confident that you'll pass the baton. It seems like you have sophomores and juniors who are now involved, and that'll keep going. But I do think it sounds like, to make sure that you keep getting whatever assistance you need from us or others. I do think, it might be a good idea to have, if you decide it's a good idea to have a meeting with the registrar of voters in Alameda County, it might be helpful to have somebody from the school board represented. And if you choose to go that route, I'm sure any one of us would be, happy, probably Josh, because he's been most involved, but happy to participate.
Actually, as a side note, if you could include in your letters you would like them to meet with us, that would be really fantastic.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, and then the other thing I was just going to say about the independent schools is there is an association of independent schools called IBISA. And so if you want to do outreach to them, that you might want to contact IBISA, and they have regular meetings, and you could just present to them, and then they could present it to their students. And it's not necessarily your responsibility to do the individual outreach to the schools, but it would be probably good to, you know, to do what you're doing and just make those contacts. So thank you so much. I'm inspired.
You're running a very good meeting, Madam President. I could go on and on about how inspiring I find you all as people and politically active citizens. I just find it ironic that there are, what, 6 of us, 7 of us over here, and 6 of you over there, and I can just see, like, this is like the 2032 Berkeley School Board.
Oh my gosh, to have a fight on the school.
And you know, I've had the pleasure working with the students on this issue. I had the pleasure of speaking with a Kentucky law professor who wrote a piece about this, and how he wrote it on CNN.com, and basically how the mobilization and organizing of students in the wake of Parkland, if you know, that, if nothing else, demonstrates the ability of 16 and 17-year-olds to engage in meaningful civic participation that really changes conversations. And if that doesn't justify and explain why we want and need to enfranchise these young people, I don't know what does. I will also just quickly mention that we all sort of think about voting as 18 and older and a citizen of wherever you're voting and a resident of wherever you're voting. And in fact, there are places in the United States, in addition to the 2 cities in Maryland, that allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote that deviate from that sort of quote-unquote norm. So in Missouri, foreign-born non-citizens who are planning on becoming citizens can vote in certain circumstances. In Chicago and New York, up until 2002 in New York, non-citizens could vote in school board elections. Jefferson County, Tennessee allows non-resident property owners who register their property with the local election office to vote in city elections. So this concept that somehow we're doing something completely out of the norm, while obviously new in the details, is not actually that new in the history of this country. And so that's what this law professor sort of helped me understand, and he's written a number of articles about it. And so I think it is only so obvious in light of our board president tonight and the work that you've all done that this needs to happen, and I just appreciate your efforts on it.
Cool. Like everyone said, incredibly inspiring. I'm really, really impressed by all of you guys and honored to have been able to go to school with you guys for the last 4 years. I just have one question, which, as you guys are aware, Berkeley High is really, really diverse, but how are you ensuring that like different demographic groups across BHS are being fairly represented within like who's registering to vote and who's voting?
Well, we started with all government classes, which cannot be exclusive in any way because everyone is mandated to take government as a graduation requirement. And then all of our other outreach is not segregated to specific groups. It's really about who comes up to the table, who can we just start a conversation with about civic engagement, who's willing to engage with us, and then that's kind of how it all unfolds.
I've also gone into both of the biotechnology classes, which are primarily African American, Latina, people of color classes, and they've all registered to vote. So we have been doing outreach for just not just white students.
Awesome, thank you so much. Director Hemphill?
Yes, I want to commend your efforts as well. I think certainly we've seen in the last few years, not just students in Florida coming up and talking about gun violence and how that spread, but young people coming up and talking about sexual harassment and how that spread. And even before that, Malala, you know, the Pakistani young woman who was shot in the head for sticking up for the right of young girls to be educated. So I really want to recognize, and I appreciate the fact that you are also being political and finding your voice. One of the things, though, and I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but I am a little concerned, though, that, and I don't know how we address this, that we're creating kind of two classes of students at Berkeley High, kind of those that can vote and those that cannot vote. And I don't know how, in a community, how do you make that whole? So, for example, we have approximately 200 students at Berkeley High who are under McKinney-Vento. Those are students that are legally Berkeley residents in terms of our obligation to serve them educationally, but because of their housing status, may not have a Berkeley address for some period of time while they're with us. These are not transfer students. These are actually students that, according to the law, McKinney-Vento, are students. But those would be students that, could not register if, they could be in a shelter right across the border while they're waiting to come back to Berkeley, or the law is once they become homeless in our city, they are our students. I'm also concerned about our undocumented students as well, or students whose immigration status would prevent them also from voting. And I say this because I think some, and of course our transfer students, we do have transfer students at Berkeley High. And I would say particularly for our undocumented students and our McKinney-Vento students, I'm really concerned about how, what will Vote 16 mean for them, and how will the Vote 16 movement be done in a way that doesn't further marginalize students. And also, they're a voice that is very specific, which I'm concerned, is not going to be heard because they will not be part of Vote 16.
Absolutely. Thank you for your questions. As a participant of the Youth Commission, I've worked a lot on McKinney-Vento and with working to provide resources for those students. I will say that on a voter registration ballot, you can register as homeless or with no formal place of residence. So it doesn't necessarily prevent them from the ability to vote. However, I do understand the need for just as much diversity in which students we get to vote. And to answer your question about the two classes, I think what has really come up, at least in the last walkout pertinent to the March for Our Lives, is that everyone should be engaging in some kind of activism that they can participate in, whether they have the legal status to vote or not. And that's what our organization stands for. Yes, the main thing we're fighting for is the ability to vote for school board elections, but we also are talking about, okay, signing letters. You can still phone bank, you can still sign letters, you can still engage in activism in different ways, and that's the culture that we hope to foster at Berkeley High, which includes the right to vote, but it does also include other things. I know Adina wanted to say something really quick.
Yeah, I just want to say, well, thank you also for your question. And actually, the students brought this up as an issue. Would we make people feel uncomfortable if they weren't able to register to vote? And something that we came up with was a couple of things. One is that there are a lot of students who were already registered to vote by the time we got to the classrooms, which was really impressive. So there were quite a few students who maybe we would register maybe half a class sometimes, which just goes to show you how many classes we went to because we were able to register so many students. And so because of that, it wasn't clear, who had registered already, who couldn't register. We didn't really call anyone out. And we definitely trained our volunteers to be aware of that so they weren't prompting students or forcing them to vote in any kind of way, because that's really important too, is that they're doing it because they want to, and that they're not being pressured to, especially if they're not able to. So
I also want to point
out, and those students that are not citizens that are here, not undocumented but fully documented, but they're not citizens, that would also be a population that would be excluded from Vote 16.
Yeah, we talked very specifically when we were doing training on how to go into classrooms to not ask at all about anybody's legal status or status as a citizen or any type of resident status. We just presented all of the options as they are and stated that you cannot register to vote as a non-citizen, but we were very careful with our words and how to make sure to not marginalize any students. We did talk about that a lot.
Also, I just want to mention quickly that on the flip side, there's tons of students at Berkeley High whose families are undocumented, but they themselves are citizens of this land, of this country. And so this is also opening up such a huge opportunity for a family or a household to have their voice heard. Just period, say you have a high schooler who can vote for school board elections and their younger sibling is being impacted at an elementary school, they would also have the opportunity to vote.
Okay, do we have any last lingering questions from the rest of the board? Yeah, Vice President Pell.
Well, I just wanted to wrap up unless, were you going to wrap up? I mean, it seems like it sounds like there's consensus that we're happy to write a letter and that we're going to add to the letter a request that the county registrar of voters meet directly with you and, you know, that our doors are open if anything else comes up.
Thank you for your time.
You don't have to wait till the next presentation. You can contact Josh, obviously, and then any of us as well. Thank you.
Just also, you know, all the board members, you can always invite us to your clubs or meetings and talk to us, ask us questions. We're always open to that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for presenting. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the LeConte School renaming update. Before I turn it over to the superintendent to introduce, I'd just like to stress that this is not an appropriate time for board members to weigh in on potential names and preferences. That would preempt the public discussion, so please keep that in mind when you are making your comments. Superintendent?
Thank you. Just to frame our discussion for tonight, we've had 3 discussions over the last couple of months, presentations to the board, and you know, in November the board discontinued the name, and after that we formed a naming advisory committee that started the work probably in December. Since then, there have been countless committee meetings, engagement with the community as well as with the staff. So tonight we're bringing to the board an update on that process. There are a couple of questions that we have before the board. I'm just going to read them quickly so that as Natasha is preparing her presentation, think about these questions that we have before you. Does the board have any clarifying questions about the process so far? Does the board have any concerns or suggestions about the process for community discussions of the top choices? And then finally, currently the committee is anticipating providing a rationale for the top choice name and is considering offering second and third choice options and or variations on names. In order to aid in its deliberations, what would the board hope to see included in the May 23rd recommendation document, along with at least one top choice name?
We have a complicated presentation here. I'm a Mac-based life form, not a PC-based life form, so Liz is getting this up and running. We have a presentation that...
Okay, wait, sorry, that mic sounds a little bit wacky. You could maybe use the other one?
Well, that vote 16, this one's weird too. What's with the echoes?
Turn, make sure one, oh, yeah,
One is just
they're
one.
connected, that's right. Maybe the live mic? I don't know.
So that was a tough act to follow.
Okay. This one's working, and that sounds better. Yeah? Ish? No? I just sound like a person. Yeah. All right. Well, I just brought this one over. Testing. Oh, that's good. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Well, Vote 16 was a tough act to follow, and I certainly hope that once I'm done with the LeConte process, I'll have more bandwidth to assist in that process, which I also am very interested in. And it was just so interesting to hear about their history and what they're doing, which reminds me of what I've been learning along the way about the history of school names and about voting for school board. And as I think I mentioned in a prior presentation, before the 19th Amendment passed and women could vote, Berkeley had women who were able to vote and run for school board. The first person, though, was elected, I believe, by men in 1909, the first woman, Eleanor Carlisle. Interesting parallels. So thank you for this opportunity to update you on the LeConte naming process. As the board president framed this correctly. We're not looking tonight for reflections upon the names. That is a part of what I'll be presenting tonight. The board document itself is fairly short and doesn't go into the process of how we got from the 118 names to a list of 20 names to 7 names. So I'll be speaking about that briefly and very briefly describing the 7 names, but I'll be wanting at the end of the presentation to hear some responses from the board that could help guide the committee in its further process. Okie doke. Is this going? Yes, it is. Okay. So since the last February update to the board, the Superintendent's Advisory Committee has been conducting a series of community meetings in keeping with the board policy and a series of committee meetings and even subcommittee meetings in order to get all this work done in an inclusive and effective and timely manner. There has been the 10-person committee along with 3 alternates and a lot of other helpers has spun off at least 6 subcommittees to assist with planning and publicity, outreach, developing a criteria that can be used for evaluating the names, a separate subcommittee for reviewing the naming submissions, a subcommittee that's very busy right now involving and planning for school involvement on naming discussions, and then eventually there will be, I hope, a reporting and writing subcommittee to help me with summarizing what has been a truly complex process. We've had the 3 community meetings that are required according to the administrative regulation, the one to explain the process, the one to solicit names, and the one to get some feedback on preliminary names. So in order to get all these names in the first place, we also had to have a process of putting the word out that we were looking for names. We circulated that word in print and online and ended up being far more successful than we expected in my prior conversations with other districts that have done something like this. I was expecting we'd get about 60 names. We got double that, nearly double that, with 118 names from 220 submissions. Some of the names were repeats, and we also had a petition, about 300 signatures for one of the names. So that was a lot for a committee to sort through. Going through 118 names and being able to do that in a meaningful way where we understood what we were looking at meant that we needed to develop at least a brief paragraph or so about each of these 118. So that's what I did on my February break. And then we got to conducted a straw poll of the entire committee. Rather than ask the sorting committee on their own to have to go through this 118 names, the entire committee took a look at the names, thought about the criteria and the rubric that we had discussed as a group and also had shared with the community, and using that and with some further research and discussions, we're able to get down to 20 names, and then the entire committee came together again to go from 20 names down to 7. Just very briefly, these are the criteria that we use both in soliciting the names and in our naming discussions. They were criteria that were discussed both in committee and with the community, and also reflect and connect to the board policy, as well as having aspects of ideas that arose in various conversations in the community, obviously reflecting the multiple purposes that a school name can carry. The primary purpose of a school name, one we often forget, is just simply to locate the name. Where is this school? Is it a unique enough name? We can't have names all the same. And that's somewhat reflected in these criteria, but really the most important criterion for many people was that the name be inspiring. The idea of honoring and reflecting the community in some way, the idea of an enduring name. The LeConte name endured for 125 years, but we are now in a period of wanting to think again about how we want to represent ourselves, and so the committee and the community has been aware of the fact that we might choose a name that is simply for this moment, and we want to think about a name that endures irrespective of how the program might change or what we might eventually learn about a chosen namesake, so there was a lot of thought put into that. The Berkeley values criteria has to do with the portion of the board policy that speaks to the importance of a name reflecting, if it's an individual, for example, someone who's made significant contributions to the community. That's a little different from the Berkeley and Bay Area connection. So the values, I mean, we can all talk about what all of our community values might be, but the connection piece has to do with whether the individual or idea is rooted in this community in some way, and that gets back to kind of the uniqueness idea of a name. The TWI identity, this is currently a two-way immersion school, Spanish, English, bilingual, multicultural, multilingual, and although it used to be a science magnet school and we recognize the programs often change, that identity is really key to this community right now, and many names reflect that. Education connection, it is a school, and so a name that maybe in some way celebrates an individual or an idea that is connected to learning was important. And then the last two, underrepresented and underrecognized, they sound the same, they're not quite the same thing. Underrecognized means looking across our 17 schools in Berkeley and thinking about the kinds of names we have now. Do we want to have names that, whether it's of an individual or an idea or a type of name that's not as widely represented? Under-recognized is somewhat different. That has to do with whether the person or the idea is already in wide use. Okey-doke. So this is what that got us. Of the 118 names, we had 76, and this is an appendix in the board packet, so you don't have to try and squint and read this if you're at home. But 76 names that were people, couples, families, many of them, some of them living, some from the past, some local heroes, some known nationally or internationally, people of very different ethnicities and nationalities. There are writers, poets, teachers, scientists, civic icons, civil rights icons, musicians, public servants of various sorts. We've highlighted, I don't know if the color shows up very well for you, but the ones in green were the ones where the committee ended up spending a substantial amount of time discussing. And then in addition to those 76, there were another 42 that were not people. In our community and committee meetings, many people brought up the issue, particularly looking at the LeConte history, of the problems inherent in choosing an individual. Nobody's perfect, basically. Our heroes are human, our idols have feet of clay, and also that idea of choosing one person to represent everybody can be a challenge. And so many people came up with ideas that were still in keeping with board policy, but described other possibilities. The mission of the school, or at least the current mission of the school, the location of the school, reflecting the beauty of nature through various phrases, some inspiring phrases like adelante and si se puede, and also some names reflecting the indigenous peoples who have and continue to live here. A few names were tongue-in-cheek, and we left them on the list anyway. You can look for those later. Here are the 20 names that made the cut initially, and I won't spend time on them. Again, there are on our website. We have links under the LeConte naming link, links you to other pages, and there are some brief descriptions of each of these top 20. These top 20 people and ideas, many of them with deep roots in the Berkeley or local community. Again, links to civil rights, the environment, art, and literature. Each one of these has an important and inspiring story, and I would urge you to take a look at them. It really was hard going from these 20 to initially to 6. We grew it to 7. Everyone on the committee, I'm not on the committee, I simply support the committee, but everyone on the committee had a favorite that didn't necessarily make the top 7. I'm sure many in the community see a name here that they wish would make it to the top 7 that isn't there, but it's really inspiring to know that there are so many great ideas that could serve a school very well. So now we get to the top 7 names. So the top 7 names, you actually see reflected. They're in the board packet, so it's not a surprise, but they're also around the boardroom here on the walls. I want to thank Liz Chaitis and Jessica Lopez for putting up the posters that were made by a committee member, Maya Evers, who put a great deal of work into it. And these posters and other materials are being shared with the community. And I'm going to show you what those posters look like. If I can click on, ooh, Liz, I don't know. if I can get to the next page, there was a link. It's not showing up on my screen to the next part. And this, what I'm going to show you now, is something brief about each of the 7. They are not going to appear in priority order. I'm just going to share with you something about each of the top 7, why they were selected, so you have an appreciation of how that took place, and then I'll move on to what the next steps are and ask for any questions you might have about the process.
Quickly, while we are figuring out the technology, I'd just like to recognize the names Schooly, McSchoolface, and Short Fellow that were suggested. I was reading through the packet and just cracked up at those. So
that provided us with some amusement. We were pretty sure those 2 were in jest. One of the things that we did when we were soliciting the name suggestions was we had flyers around the neighborhood, and I and a number of others were, walking around the neighborhood and handing out flyers. And a mom and kid came home, and I explained why I was, loitering in their driveway, and and handed her the flyer, and she said, and maybe she was the one who turned it in, "I have the answer, Schooly McSchoolface." So. And I assume people know where that comes from. For those who don't know, the Bodie McBoatface suggestion, I think it was the Coast Guard, had put out, was that it?
It was the UK,
Navy?
the Navy.
The Navy?
Asked for, I think, citizens of the UK to suggest for their new submarine or whatever it was.
Wow, wow.
Bodie McBoatface guy was the #1. Okay.
Well, Liz, I could start if you think it's going to be problematic, and I can just start talking about the 7. So I think it'll come as no surprise that one of the top 7 is Dolores Huerta on the short list. As Director Leva Cutler was mentioning, we're right in the middle of our Chavez Huerta annual commemoration period. So obviously a figure in this community that has a great deal of resonance, along with that student contest that you mentioned for the best essays. We also, of course, Dolores Huerta is very well known for her activism on behalf of the working poor, families, women and children in particular. And, I see pictures coming up. This is good. There are, in fact, actually several schools that are named for her, and not in the Bay Area, but in Stockton and in Southern California. And by the way, there is a documentary on KQED that you can watch streaming about Dolores Huerta. It just happens to be happening right now, so that's kind of good timing for those who want to learn more. Each of these individuals, in addition to these posters, there are online resources that are on our webpage and also being shared with the LeConte community. So another school name that made it to the top is Ruth Actie. Ruth Actie is a trailblazer, the first African-American teacher in our school's first teacher of color in the Berkeley Unified School District, was hired in 1943 after a coalition of very determined people, including the remarkable Frances Allbrier and a really fierce president of the board, Dr. Louise Hector, and a superintendent who was committed, and they together were able to push the board to change the policy at the time where there was a color bar, and our students actually were relatively diverse by then. With World War II, there had been quite an influx and a diversification of the city, but our teaching staff did not reflect that. They recruited, Ruth Actie had expressed interest in teaching and had not been hired prior. The superintendent reached out and recruited her. She was an epitome of excellence, brilliant, highly qualified, overqualified, multiple degrees, multiple credentials. They brought her in to teach kindergarten at Longfellow initially, and what they said at the time was that kindergarten children were less prejudiced. And she went on to teach at a number of grades in a number of schools. She taught French, she taught theater, she taught English. She also taught English as a second language. It was estimated upon her retirement after teaching for nearly 50 50 years that she had touched 7,000 to 8,000 students in her career. And there is a beautiful little booklet. So at the end of this presentation, I'll ask the Chiters to hand up to the board a beautiful booklet that was made by Estela Cisneros, the librarian, with the help of Gary Reyes, because there wasn't a book in print about her. There are some wonderful resources, though, at the Berkeley Historical Society. Steve Finicom was very instrumental in helping us bring us some. There are online archives as well about her. Another inspiring teacher also made it to the top 7, and this is the person for whom there was the petition that garnered over 300 names. Denise Brown, whose name, by the way, was spelled with lowercase. That's how she preferred it. She began her career at LeConte, at first as a parent and a PTA volunteer. She was active in the Berkeley Black Theater and brought theater productions to the LeConte School, was renowned for that, for the after-school program and for a summer program. She was encouraged by then Principal Barbara Penny James to get a teaching credential. She already had an undergraduate degree. She went back, got a teaching credential, taught for 10 years at LeConte, then was poached by Berkeley High, who took her to become, I believe, the founding vice principal for the Arts and Humanities Academy, where she was a much beloved figure. She was also Dean of Discipline. Unfortunately, she died young, at age 50 from complications of surgery, and was hugely mourned. There is a mural at Berkeley High made by AHA students in her honor, and there's also a picture of her hanging over the LeConte Auditorium in recognition of her inspiring efforts. And then after these the two teachers, we come to two students, very important to the history of schools and specifically to desegregation. So the first is the story of Sylvie Mendez. And again, as Director Lebe Cutler mentioned, the Mendez story was the topic of last year's essay contest for the Chavez Huerta commemoration period. What this reflects here is the Mendez family and Sylvie as a member of the family who in 1947 was involved in a landmark case of Mendez versus Westminster. It was one that eventually provided some of the foundation for Brown versus Board of Education. I want to take just a moment to say that, you know, Louise Brown just passed away. I just heard a wonderful interview with her. So all of these connect. Thurgood Marshall wrote an amicus brief on behalf of the NAACP that was part of the Mendez versus Westminster case, where the family had been denied enrollment in the local school because there was a separate school for children of Hispanic descent. Sylvia Mendez herself grew up to be a nurse, and then later upon retirement, she's now in her very early 80s, has continued to tell her family's story, received the Medal of Freedom from President Obama, and there are many wonderful books about her family and a couple of schools named after them in Southern California, which is where they were from. And then there's another great story here that came up during this process, a little-known part of Berkeley and California history, which is the Tape family. So Mary Tape is the name of the mother. Mamie Tape is the name of the child. They were in the late 1880s living in San Francisco and tried to enroll Mamie in the local school. They were denied, again, similar to the Mendez case. It was because there was an all-white school and there was a separate school for what they called Orientals. They the Tape family fought this in court, and they won, actually. Mary was particularly fierce and outspoken advocate. Mary Tape was really a remarkable woman, born in China, came here as a child. I recommend that you read more about her. She was trailblazing in her career choices. So the family brought this case. It was called Tape v. Hurley against the San Francisco School Board. The California Supreme Court found in their favor. However, lawmakers immediately turned around and changed the law, and so back to separate but equal, quote unquote. And so at that point, or shortly thereafter, the Tapes moved to Berkeley because they wanted to be in a community where there was not segregation for schools, and also they were able to buy a home, which they could not do in San Francisco. They were Chinese were kept in Chinatown. So they enrolled their children, they bought a house, actually a couple of houses, a block away from LeConte School, and enrolled their children in LeConte School, which had just opened a few years before. So going on from the stories of people, we also had a suggestion, actually many suggestions, that sought to honor the original peoples, the indigenous peoples of the Berkeley area. The committee received the suggestion Ohlone. Several people suggested that word for the group of people in general. Also the words Lisian and Huichin, which are words reflecting the specific location and specific people within this area. The word Mokwema has come up, meaning the people in the Chochenyo language, and Chochenyo, which again is the word, a language word and a people word. However, in discussing this further, the committee felt that it was important not to adopt one of these names or choose among those possibilities without the involvement, the engagement, and the approval of the people that you're seeking to honor. So you don't just go and appropriate the name without consultation. So through some of my connections and some other connections, we've been reaching out to some local tribal representatives who, with some initial interest, the concern is that our feeling is that given the timeline where there needs to be a decision by the end of May, that being able to do this in time and do deep engagement with tribal representatives may be prohibitive. Last but not least, Arco Iris. So Arco Iris was a suggestion made by a 5th grade student at LeConte, the school formerly known as LeConte, pardon me. Arco Iris, of course, can be a symbol for many things, a symbol of hope, a symbol of diversity, of inclusion, of pride. It's reflected in 2 beautiful children's books, which I've brought along. And when we debuted the 7 names to the school community, it was one of the crowd favorites. Liz, can you help me switch back to the very last slide, which last two slides. So those are the top 7, and now that we have those top 7, we've begun the community engagement process, shared these names with the community as a whole 2 weeks ago, and now the outreach committee is engaged in a huge amount of work. They've been very ambitious in providing a lot of classroom and home resources, so there can be classroom discussions and family discussions. The idea is to send home every week a flyer, every week between now and the end of April, a flyer that has 2 or possibly 3 names on it with some a study guide and some questions for family discussion. And so that will culminate by the end of April in some community discussions that we will give some feedback to the committee so that it's able to reflect upon what the school community has said. We also have to continue the outreach, and I've done this now with several of the potential namesakes to see what their thoughts are about this before we go adopting any of these names. So not just Ohlone, but some of the other people who are either living or have descendants. And then we will come back to you, the board, on May 23rd with the superintendent's recommendation. And then after you, the board, have made your decision at the subsequent meeting, the policy and the AR require me or the superintendent's designee to provide a report on the process and reflection on the process, including implementation, which, as you can imagine, is going to take a great deal of work and involve many departments, from facilities to payroll to student information systems. And so here's the end. The questions for you, the board. The committee has asked me to ask you these questions. Do you have any clarifying questions about the process so far? Do you have any suggestions or concerns about the process for community discussions of the top choices? Again, that'll be happening over the next month. While I'm reading these questions, Ms. Chiras is going to hand out to you some of the learning materials. Estela Cisneros, the librarian, sent these along, and then, by the way, the PTA also funded some additional purchases, so every classroom has equal access. You can each, I think you can keep a copy of the special booklet they each made about Ruth Acti in both English and in Spanish. The big question, really, maybe the main question other than question 2, is since we won't be coming back to you again, most likely until May 23rd with the superintendent's recommendation, what is it that the board would like to see reflected in the document that will go to you with the superintendent's recommendation of a name or potentially more than one name choice for the school? That's it.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate this effort and the transparency that you have shown us in the presentation. So I guess we're going to reverse the order now to go down. So Director Daniels.
Thank you, Madam President. Director Berry, I just wanted to thank you for the incredible amount of work and leadership that has clearly gone into this. I know you said that it was difficult to follow the student presentation for Vote 16, but I think you did as good a job in the sense that it had the amount of work that went into genuine and authentic stakeholder engagement and transparency. It really is reflected in the quality and thoughtfulness and of the final 7. And I'm not weighing in any way. It clearly resulted in a strong candidates. I don't have any questions about clarifying the process. As I said, I think it was excellent, and I think as time-consuming as it was, and as I'm sure challenging at times as it was, I think it clearly has been a really strong process that we might want to look at as obviously make modifications to, but based upon your feedback, this policy and others, in terms of how we do real community engagement. But I also think it's a lesson for us that real community engagement takes a lot of time and resources to do it well, and that it's not something that can be done sort of quickly. Also, a shout out to Mr. Finicom, who's here tonight, for his support for your work as well. We really appreciate it. Suggestion about the process for community discussions. I just feel like you're on a good direction, good path, and I have confidence that the process that you've embarked on will continue to go strongly. Unless there's specific things you want feedback on, I think I'm feeling pretty confident. For the third, I think it would. I think the way in which you articulated from the 188 or whatever it was to the 20 to the 7, it sounds like you're headed in this direction anyway. But the be they logistical or substantive in terms of the name itself, the reasons why the whatever were not chosen were not chosen, even if there were arguments in favor, on the whole, this was the reason why. The recommendations, from the committee are being made. And just to reiterate what I think make sure I'm clear and that the thousands watching are clear as well, that we're not necessarily requiring only one to come forward. That it may just be one, it could be 2, it could be 3.
Okay.
Or it could be more. Is that?
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
So the only clarifying question I have is, of those names of people, how many are from the school community and how many are from the neighborhood?
How many were proposed by, or?
No, just like you had a list of all the people who've been involved in the process.
Oh, yes, and in terms of who's been involved, so absolutely, even though it's been time-consuming for me, I could not do this without a phenomenal committee. So the advisor committee consists of 10 individuals, or actually 13, because 10 plus 3 alternates who ended up showing up every time and doing a ton of work. There are 3 who are neighbors, actually some who are both neighbors and parents, and there are 4 who are staff. The number of overlap, there are 1, 2, 3 who are purely neighbors. But many of the parents are also neighbors, and 3 who are staff, 4 who are staff. They have put in a ton of work, and also definitely could not have done this without one of the parents, Grace Kong, who stepped forward to facilitate, and who has been a phenomenal partner. Superintendent's nodding, he's seen her in action, it's phenomenal. And the entire committee, really very thoughtful in the process that we went through in selecting the committee. We just put it out there, who wants to serve, and then we asked people what their interests were, what their connections were to the school, what their thoughts were about the process. And they have different opinions, they have different backgrounds, people have been extremely collaborative and very willing to listen, and I hope that continues to be the case and is a model for the community as a whole.
Yeah, it seems like a really great process, and I was just curious about that. And I'm also curious about the racial diversity of the group.
Let's see. Well, I don't claim to know everybody's everything, but I would say we have a representative who is a member of PCAD. We have several Spanish-speaking members. We have pretty good mix gender-wise across the spectrum, age-wise as well. So I think it's pretty good in terms of representation, although as you know, we always struggle with committees that perfectly reflect, and that's one of the reasons why we're also intending in the next piece to be doing some direct connections to basically kind of focus groups, an ELAC group, a PCAD group, etc.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that. That's maybe you said that and I missed it.
No, I didn't say that. So
okay, so that's great. Process for community discussions of the top choices. Sounds like you're doing a great job. No suggestions? That was a good suggestion to go have focus groups. I didn't think of it, but that's a good one. So for me, I would like to have more than one choice in front of me. So I would like to have at least 3 choices, just so that we are not kind of stuck in the situation where there's only one choice that comes forward and we as a board don't really feel comfortable with that as a representation for whatever reason. I want to make sure that after all this process we have 3, and I would actually even better if they weren't even ranked, but it sounds like they'll be ranked because the superintendent will have his top choice. But anyway, I'm just one board member, but that would be my request.
Okay.
Thank you. This is really great in terms of all these women and men just being very stellar. The names, they're just, and their history, I mean, it makes you want to open up a book and read more about them. So even if they don't make it, I think it's, for our students, this is a process that I think everybody benefits from. So thank you, and thank you. I think we need to have some celebratory after this whole process for everybody that's been engaged and been part of this process, because and I want to thank you and everybody else who's been on it, that, the time and effort. I know some part of it is really enjoyable because you're learning, but I know it's more, it's work. So tell me again how the finalists will be determined. It'll come back to us in May, and
so yes, so May 23rd, the superintendent's document comes to you with probably more than one option and rationale for why the names that are being presented are still proposed for consideration, perhaps why the ones that were not moved forward were not. And then you'll have an opportunity to discuss this amongst yourselves, and you'll make a decision at probably the following board meeting.
Well, I really liked the naming discussion criteria, and I was wondering if you would use that as a matrix, because that seems to be, I can't imagine how do you compare them, but at least something more would pop up from the group and the conversations that you're having in the focus group in terms of why this person is inspiring and why do you think their naming would be enduring for the school. Might help us, might bring out some stuff, some things, and it would help. For me, the way I learned, it would be nice to compare and to see it alongside using the same criteria we use for one person to other people. Because this is perfect, I think, in terms of what was being determined in terms of how names rose to the top.
Yeah, thank you for that. And actually, we spent, the rubric subcommittee was one that I served on along with a teacher who was phenomenal. And we tried to take those criteria and actually put them into a matrix, into a rubric, tried weighting it in different ways, trying to see if that would save us in some way to come up with magic numbers that would sort them all. It didn't quite work because particularly when there were a lot of apples and orange comparisons, particularly between people and non-people or group, and it was just a little tough. We did find the criteria, though, returning to them as discussion points, and that certain ones would come up repeatedly. Oh, this name is very well represented, or this name is not really recognized, or this name is really tied to Berkeley. So people will use those. So we could reintroduce those as possible prompts, perhaps, for the board discussion. Would that make sense?
Otherwise, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're doing a great job, President Nagarajan Swenson. If you don't know who Wally Pip is, look it up, because Director Daniels is going to be Wally Pipped tonight. I second everything that everyone said about the process. Thank you so much for this, and including what Director Daniels said about it being a lesson for us in the costs of real community involvement. So I think that's really important. I have a slightly different perspective from my good friend, Vice President Appel, on the number of names to bring to us. And I guess it's not, I don't object to 3 names or more than 3 names or them being unranked or whatever. But I also don't feel like the committee has to bring us more than 1 name. To me, the amount of sort of leeway we have is sort of, I think it should be sort of, I guess, inversely proportional to the robustness of the process. So where you've had this incredibly robust process that is, you know, only seems like halfway through and there's more to go and more focus groups, to give the board, you know, 5 names and not rank them, ultimately it is the board's decision and it should be the board's decision which name we choose. But I don't want to devalue or disrespect in any way the community's involvement, the community sort of broadly and the school community. And so that feels, it would feel to me like we were, well, I guess just that if the committee, I would defer completely to the committee in terms of how many names and in what format they come to us, and to the superintendent taking those recommendations. If the committee feels strongly that it wants to give the board 3 names and wants to rank them or doesn't want to rank them, I think we should respect the committee's views. If the committee says we all agree on 1 name and here's the reasons why and we want that communicated to the board, then I think that should come to the board. Ultimately, we can name the school anything we want. We can name the school, 1 name can come to us from Dr. Evans and we could pick another one of these 7 names, or we can pick a name that isn't even on the list. So, yeah,
but just think about that would really
I'm not planning to advocate for that. I'm just saying that, that you know, that's in our authority. And so, so I think we should leave it to the committee to decide how they want to present the names to us.
Okay.
And I'm also just 1 board member, but those are my views on the number.
Okay. Mr. Finicom just reminded me, and maybe Uma, you'll want to reflect on this one because it's germane to you, come to think of it, is as the committee has talked about these names, one response that we got at the community meeting that was held 2 weeks ago at the school was people said, one person said, I love the names, can we just hyphenate them all? And there has been some discussion about, you know, a couple of, you happen to have a hyphenated last name, you know, that Mendez and Tape go together, they're connected, that, you know, Acti and Brown, 2 teachers. You know, would the board entertain, in addition to suggestions about a favorite name or 2 top names, would they want to hear variations on names suggested, whether it's a combination of names, whether it's, you know, for Sylvia Mendez, you could do Sylvia Mendez, you could do Mendez family, you know, there are multiple things you could do. Do you want the committee to do that work? Do you want to spend some time thinking about that?
I mean, my view is that that's the job of the committee. If the committee wants to propose Tape Mendez as a name, and the committee votes to send that name to the board, then that should come to the board. Again, the board could always decide to do that on its own, but I think it's better if it comes from the committee.
Yeah.
I agree with that. So if anyone has any last questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. We should probably keep moving. So I think now we're going to take a quick 3-minute break for stretching and bathroom and snacks or whatever you want, and then we will return for the trivia question.
Thank you.
What I didn't mention is I didn't want to say the name actually live.
Okay, if we could now return for the trivia question. Director Daniels and Leva Cutler, if we could return for the trivia question right now. Oh my God, Ty's back just in time.
Oh, I can see it. Get that? Can we make sure that's being recorded, please? Now the trick.
Where did you go? You had them in your car? Okay.
Do you guys mind if we have bananas?
So coming back, the trivia question.
This is when you want to use the...
Yes, ooh. Okay, so the trivia question, I'll just say it again, was Berkeley High School students are known for many things, including their clubs. Which one of the following student clubs out of 10 has not, at least in the last 4 years, been an official student club at Berkeley High School? We have 2 students. Oops. So if you would like to answer this, please come to the podium. Kyla, run. I love starting beef. Okay.
Speech team is the fake club.
You are correct. Congratulations.
Sorry.
You got the prize. But just out of curiosity, Jai, what were you going to say?
I was going to say speech because speech is fake.
I tried to trick you. You get BUSD swag. I don't know where it is. You can both get it. Jai, you should give it to me. Okay, moving back onto the agenda.
Email me. Kyla. Email me.
Our next item is 12.12, which was pulled from the consent calendar. Director Daniels pulled this. Would you like to speak as to why you did that?
Sure. I don't think there's a presentation. So as the board and the community might recall, on February 28th, when we approved our almost $1.8 million in cuts, that was $14,000 short. I was just saying that one of the things we did was we transferred some costs that had been traditionally borne by the general fund into the global sort of BSEP budget. And that meant, for purposes of BSEP, that there would need to be some conversations with the Program and Oversight Committee, the P&O Committee, around how to adjust for those additional expenses. And at the time, the likely recommendation was to, among other things, reduce and, eliminate the Berkeley Research Evaluation and Assessment sort of department director as a position and have a report to Associate Superintendent Scuderi. Item 12.12 that's now before us is in line with that recommendation. And we did have a conversation about it, but I, at the time, had concerns about it. I think I might have been the only one. But if I wanted just to have us all go sort of make it more explicit about what we are choosing to eliminate rather than having it on consent. So I will just make one, hopefully brief argument about this particular item and why I think we should explore other options, and I will have said my piece, and if I've convinced anyone, we can have that discussion. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to even second a motion. So I think that as a district that is looking to improve, particularly for students who we have historically struggled to serve as a group, that it is really important to be driven by data. And in order to be driven by data, you need people to do data analysis. And in order to do data analysis, you actually need people who are doing that in their full-time job, both directly and supervising those who are doing it well. And I just think that it is unfortunately, not that there are any other good options, but it is short-sighted of us as a district to reduce our ability to make data-driven decisions, given how desperately we need to do that even more. And I understand that there is this feeling that we've sort of maybe been able to, inch along without the services of that position recently. but I think that over the long term, that is an FTE that we will wish we had. And the level of data analysis and data crunching that goes into things like the LCAP and other things, particularly since we ask the superintendent to recommend eliminating or reducing actions every year, is time intensive. And I just think that it will hurt the system that is Berkeley Unified and the system's ability to make better decisions. Said my piece.
Okay, do any other board members want to weigh in? Vice President Appel, and then Director Alpert.
Excuse me. You know, I've been thinking about this too, President Daniels, and you know, I have felt like perhaps we don't need quite as many resources in that department to do high quality data analysis, which I think is very important. But I've been thinking about it, and I'm not sure that this is the right way to go about that, because I think not having somebody at the skill level of a director. And so, you know, in thinking about it, I was thinking maybe, even though we want, I guess one of the questions would be, do we need to pass this tonight? Because I think I would like to be able to, at least for myself, have more of an opportunity to find out if there are any other structure, like staffing structures that have been discussed. You know what I mean? So that maybe we would, instead of getting rid of a director position, get rid of one of the other.
So we've actually started this conversation a long, long time ago. I mean, a long time ago. We've discussed all the options that we thought would be viable options. And this was the one that we thought would be the best. And delaying this it throws us farther back in terms of the process, in terms of hiring, letting people, noticing folks, and we've already started that process. And so I'm really concerned about us delaying this process. And I hear what you're saying, but we have considered every option that we thought was possible.
Can I just add, Dr. Evans, too, that the other positions that are associated in a now expanded class size reduction budget would be subject to delays in hiring as well, unless there was some special provision that I'm unaware of that would allow us to talk about this in isolation.
Were you going to say something?
I just want to say, I mean, I think it would be possible in sort of technically to approve a portion of the budget, not all the budget. That being said, because of the interactions between all of the high quality instruction budget, I think, you know, if we approved everything else but the Brea budget, right, we're not leaving ourselves any other options to do it but the Brea budget. So I mean, I've shared other alternatives in the past. I'm not sure it's worth doing it again, given there are other issues between, they're not in the high quality instruction budget, so you need to find other items from the general fund to push into the, you know, into BSEP. So it's a complicated sort of dance that makes sure we stay true to BSEP and stay true to our purposes. So, you know, I think if we, you know, so anyways, that's just, I think it technically could be done, but I think in practice it would cause a number of the challenges that the superintendent and staff recognize, unless there is a specific alternative that the board, you know, really wanted to entertain at this meeting. But given the previous discussion of the board that didn't raise any concerns, I don't think staff appropriately so you know, was ready to offer any alternatives because they didn't think that there was a need.
Right. I mean, my memory is that the last time that this was brought up, a majority of the board heard and respected your views, but did not support them. And that, to me, that doing this tonight would reopen the entire budget cuts discussion, at least with respect to about, what is it, $150,000 of additional cuts. 180. Okay. So I would urge us to approve this tonight. I think I personally had extensive conversations with the superintendent, with the associate superintendent about this reduction. If I thought that it was going to significantly or even at all reduce our ability to make data-driven decisions, I wouldn't support it, but I don't think it will. I think the reorganization may increase our ability to make data-driven decisions. And I think that it would be sort of unfair and inequitable to all the other aspects of the district that we've made cuts in, which I think, did a really good job of doing across the district. And we told the sites and we told the district offices, and we told the bargaining units, we're making cuts across all bargaining units, across the sites, across the districts, and to carve out one district office and saying it's completely protected from any cuts, I think is inconsistent with that important principle that we went into the budget cuts, I think, committed to. So I would make a motion to approve this this item, the staff recommendation.
Was that a motion? Okay, is there a second?
Just a comment in terms of, yeah, I'm going to move forward with a vote on this because I think we did have we had conversation and discussion. And I think I was the board member also that said that I would like to revisit this during the school year to see how this is working or not for the district, because maybe it could change next year if we saw that it is not functioning. And it's not working for it in terms of the amount of work the associate superintendent has or the amount of information that we need to gather. So I'd like to move forward.
Okay, so Director Alper made a motion to approve 12.12, which is the recommendation for expenditures of BSEP funds for class size reduction and support for teaching in FY 2018 to 19. Director Leva-Cutler, did you second that? Okay, should we do a roll call vote?
Director Josh Daniels.
With respect to all of the efforts of the committee, and because it's going to pass, I'm going to vote no.
Director Beatriz Leva-Cutler.
Yes.
Director Ty Alper.
Yes.
President Uma Nagarajan Swenson.
Yes.
Vice President Judy Appel.
Yes.
Okay, so this motion passes 4-1 with Director Hemphill not here. Okay, moving on to item 16, which was the first reading of the policy regarding student interviews by district council. I will turn it over to whoever's going to introduce this, Director Alper.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just trying to pull this up. This is a policy that we brought to the board, the last year's policy committee brought to the board last year for a first reading. So this is really a second reading, but I'll explain why it's actually a first reading. This is a policy that deals with questioning of students by lawyers for the school district. It doesn't affect in any way the questioning of students by administrators or teachers. It's only by district's legal counsel. When we revised our expulsion policy a couple years ago, we included a provision in that policy that said that for investigation of student discipline issues, district lawyers could not interview students without their parents' permission. This policy expands that provision to any issue. So in effect, it would say that students can't be interviewed by district lawyers unless their parents agree, in short. It's a short, concise policy. We brought it to the board last year. There was a few questions that were brought up, and we kind of ran out of time, and the board referred it back to the policy committee. We didn't act on it until just recently. The new policy committee did act on it. We had a good discussion. There were some members of the community there who helped us improve the policy to make it a little clearer what the intent was, and what you have before you is what we've come up with. So I think I'll leave it there and open it up for questions and comments from the board. And then Director Leva-Cutler and I will bring it back to the policy committee if necessary. If there are no significant comments or concerns, then we'll bring it back to the board for approval at a meeting, at a future meeting soon. So, comments, questions?
Okay, we can just go down the line starting with Director Leva-Cutler. Or
I would suggest starting the other way around since we're both on the committee.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, I don't have anything to say on this, Director Daniels.
So Director Alper, Director LeConte, thank you for your work on this. It's inspiring to see good policy work continuing to be done.
It's so much easier this committee this year.
Though he does channel you sometimes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. I just want to, my understanding is that the changes that you've made that are reflected in the second page and track changes makes it functionally more difficult because it requires affirmative written consent. For example, you can't reach the parent doesn't get back to you, you can't interview. Whereas the previous version said if the parent can't be reached, potentially the questions, could continue. And, I will probably vote for it. My concern is that in practice, this will basically prohibit district lawyers from interviewing students, because I don't think that most parents will, without even knowing the details, probably sort of affirmatively in writing consent to it, just sort of on the natural. And so all that leaves is the provisions in paragraph 4 around sort of the exceptions to that, where the superintendent determines that sort of involving the parent will irreparably impede or damage an ongoing investigation of critical and immediate importance or endanger the student or other students. So I think that is a good and appropriate exemption. I think that in most situations it makes perfect sense to get written consent. My one concern is, are there scenarios that we haven't sort of thought through? And I guess the reason why I'm inclined to vote for it, even with those reservations, that we can always go back and change the policy. If those come up and we recognize that there are, circumstances that this doesn't address. Anyways, I could probably repeat myself, but that's basically my feelings about it right now.
Yeah, and can I just respond to that? And thank you for pointing out the difference. The feedback we got in the committee particularly from a member of the community who was at our policy committee meeting was, the way we had it before said, the parent needs to be notified before the interview can happen. But if we can't read the parent, it goes forward anyway. And the feeling was that doesn't have much teeth, because they might not be able to be reached. It's sometimes hard to reach parents in the middle of the day. So yes, it is meant to ensure that the interview won't happen unless the parent agrees. I don't think it's necessarily first of all, this does happen very rarely in any event, and it's almost by definition not an emergency situation if district lawyers are involved, because it's usually been a week or two since whatever incident happened. And I think it is plausible to imagine a parent saying, yeah, I'm happy to have some serious incident happened, maybe involving an employee that my kid was a witness to. I understand why the district's lawyer needs to investigate this, but I want to know about it and I want to be in the room when it happens. And the spirit behind this policy is that the parent should have that right.
I had a question about that, so I'll go there first and then my other question. So I was also concerned about just the practicality, of it. That's what I get for having a soda in the middle of the meeting. The practicality of it, and I was wondering if you would consider or has verbal communication. So what I can imagine is you're there, the kid calls his parent or her parents, and the parents are like, oh, that's okay, you have my consent. And if the kid can hand their phone over to an administrator, so instead of being written consent, it could be verbal consent. I'm just curious to know why that would not be sufficient.
Well, we included text message as an option because the reason, and I think we've had a recent case like this where there was a dispute over whether consent was given. So it seemed to us just the safest thing to do to say, let's just get it in writing. If the phone can be handed, and it seems just as easy for a text to be sent. And I just want to reiterate that it's rarely going to be the case that it's some kind of emergency situation. The district is going to know well in advance. We've retained a lawyer to look into this situation. We can reach out to the parent. We know we want to interview these 5 students. We're going to have, it's not going to be the kid. There's a lawyer in the room who wants to interview me. The administrator will be the one calling the parent and saying, we have a situation that we need a lawyer to interview your child. Is that okay with you?
And then what about when we don't have the actual correct information for the parents?
For the parents, we don't.
Yeah, there are families who we do not have correct contact information for.
I think in that case, that's why the superintendent has the authority to, if they go down the list of all the everything that's on the emergency card, they've gone not just to the parent, but really made effort to, do you know where I can contact this parent? It's the aunt or the uncle, the grandmother. So it's really going down the list and documenting that every effort was made to contact a family member, but also giving the superintendent the authority to make a decision.
Well, I don't see that as a part of the exemption. So where am I the part that if we just can't reach a parent because they haven't given us the correct information, or they've moved, in the last 2 years, and so they no longer live. So if that's, I think believes that notification to a student's parent would irreparably impede or damage an ongoing investigation.
Yeah, so notwithstanding the above provisions, in other words, if you can't if those efforts fail, notwithstanding the fact that you haven't reached the parent, you have not gotten written consent, notwithstanding that, if it's a situation that the superintendent believes.
Yeah, but isn't then there going to be some kind of like an interpretation question there? Like, if it's not, if the person is if the student is a witness and maybe they're not like the key witness and there's no violence, and I don't know how you would. I don't know what that standard means, because I read that to be, there are some times when, notifying the parent and could actually, I don't know, potentially, it's like it is an emergency situation, and for some reason you can't get in touch with the kids. But if it's something that's not, with the parent. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm concerned about how that will be. I'd like to know from I'd like to know from the administration what their perspective is on this, because I'll probably vote for it, but if that would be something you guys could think about back at the policy committee, that would be, I think, it's a concern that I have. The other concern that I had was about the several times. I don't know what that, that seems like. I don't want to run into things where we're going to be like trying to contact, what's the language here?
It's on the second set, making multiple reasonable attempts.
Multiple reasonable attempts. I just, I'm a little concerned about, I don't know, somebody appealing, or, there being because it's vague. To me, that's pretty vague language, so.
Well, the ultimate thing they need to get is the consent. So in a way, it's probably a little bit superfluous to even have that in the policy, because the point is, and I think this is an answer to your first question too, the point is to get consent of the parent. That's really important. So that's the value that's embodied here. So if you don't have good contact information for the parents and they can't be reached, then this policy says that kid can't be interviewed, unless it's some really important case that's going to affect the safety of another, whatever the exception, how it's written. But the idea is that when you send your kid to school, whether the school has good contact information for you or not, you don't expect your child to be interviewed by a lawyer. And so if they have trouble reaching you, whether because you're in between locations, or you don't have good phone access, or you're on vacation or traveling for work, then the district is not going to have their lawyer interview the child. Remember that an administrator can always interview the student. So that if the principal can, or the director of student services can always interview the student.
Okay, that's my concern. I'm concerned there are some parents that don't respond to the school, and so it doesn't seem like that. Because there's balancing of interests as far as if an attorney is investigating a complaint, they're doing it for a reason, and so if I don't know, I don't know if there's any balance there. I don't know if you've looked at other policies, but to me it seems like there needs to be, and I guess the only way would be for the superintendent to decide that it will be irreparably harmed, and then we could face litigation based on the fact that a parent could say, well, actually, I don't think it would be, it just seems to me it's opening us up to problems that we don't necessarily need to, that we could probably look at for a way to get around.
We can look at other people also, other staff, to look at this policy. I don't know, we've had legal counsel also has looked at it too, so.
Okay, well, I will vote for it. I think it's really important we have the policy. You guys have done great work. Those two vague terms were the only things that I was a little concerned about.
That's helpful, and we can bring it back, and I think if we don't make very major substantive revisions, we could put it on consent, and someone could always pull it if they want to tinker with it more.
Okay, so unless anyone has any last comments that they would like to make, okay, let's move on to item 17, which is the update on the implementation of next generation science standards. So I will turn it over to the superintendent to introduce this.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to turn it over to our Associate Superintendent, Mr. Scuderi, to introduce and frame our next topic for discussion.
Thank you very much. So we have with us tonight Ms. Deborah Lenz, our K-8 lead teacher for science, as well as Colleen Simon O'Neill and Glenn Wokenfeld. Do you guys want to come on up? Thanks, Glenn.
Don't do us any favors.
You were just hanging out here because of the entertainment value.
Yeah. So while we're making fun comments, just for full disclosure, not that this is an action item tonight, but I just would like to let the thousands who are watching know that Mr. Wokenfeld is my uncle.
Joshie, do you have to do that every time?
I have to do that every time.
So we wanted to give you a very broad overview of the focus areas of how we're implementing the next generation science standards at all 3 levels of our school system. We have a very brief presentation just kind of outlining the big items, K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and then we'll let board questions and comments kind of drive any follow-up discussion. So we're going to start with Ms. Lenz. Thanks for being here and for being here late.
Thank you, and thanks for having us to come and present about this. I'm currently a part-time.
It has a weird.
Is this better or not?
It's
not on.
Can you try putting that one on the ground?
Oh,
this is separate now of those two. Yeah.
Oh, darker green light. Is that better? Oh,
yeah.
Great. Great. So I'm currently a part-time middle school science teacher at Willard and also part-time teacher on special assignment to represent K through 8 science in the district. And I'll start by giving a brief introduction about what's going on in the band of kindergarten through 5th grade in respect to next generation science standards. We are just beginning to start implementing and addressing next generation standards in K through 5. We have science release teachers, or science specialists as they're commonly called, that teach across the district in 4th and 5th grade, and then sporadically in 1st and 2nd grade, depending on what some schools have chosen. And we have monthly meetings and professional development with the science release group of teachers. We have purchased some of the upgrades to, we currently own FOSS curriculum that we bought maybe about 9 years ago, and it's the California version at the time. We've currently upgraded some of those kits to the next generation version of them from that company in 4th and 5th grades across the district. So some schools have some of the kits upgraded. The prep structure for next year, I'm sure there's a big discussion around the board with that, has an impact on science instruction in grades 1 through 5 across the district, and it depends on what school sites have chosen. So I just gave a brief summary of what it could look like. In kindergarten, there's still no science being taught by a prep release teacher. It's just taught by the classroom teachers. In 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades, it varies by site. Some sites are choosing to have a science prep teacher teach 2 periods of science a week. Some sites are choosing to have 1 period taught by a science prep teacher, and some sites are choosing to have no periods taught by a prep teacher, assuming the classroom teachers would cover the science. In 4th and 5th grade across the district, we have 2 prep periods being taught by a science release teacher every week. That's
No, I just wanted to interject. Yeah. I think that underscores one of the challenges with implementation at K-5 is right now we have kind of variable slots with where science is being taught and how it's being taught. And that's a little bit behind our effort to kind of solidify that in 4-5 and the work that's happening elsewhere. I also neglected, I don't know what the will of the board is, that we're in different places, K-5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. Did you want to do questions after each section or just go through the presentation and roll back to them?
We can go through the whole presentation
okay.
and then do questions.
So that's a current status of where we're at with NGSS in elementary school. And on the next slide, it just says what next steps are, and also incorporates some needs and challenges that we have with K through 5. This year, we plan to purchase the rest of the upgrades for the 4th and 5th grade curriculum, so it will be aligned across the district with next generation science standards. And with that, in the summer and into the fall and winter, to offer training to the science release teachers who will be teaching that curriculum, so they know what the changes are from the curriculum that they used to use. We have to look at what we want to do with kindergarten through 3rd grade curriculum. We currently use the California version of the FOSS kits. We can consider upgrading all of those as well, or we can look at something different, because there's no consistent science either being delivered by classroom teachers or prep teachers. It's different by each school site with what they've chosen. We might consider or pilot some different things, or decide whether we want to upgrade the FOSS curriculum. We have to determine what the supports could look like for kindergarten through 3rd grade science instruction. And again, it'll be different by site based on whether a classroom teacher is delivering it or a release teacher. But we want to continue the support that we've been providing in the PD for the 4th and 5th grade science release teachers. The sites might need some help with staffing the science release positions. Some of those positions are growing in size because of the addition of some prep periods in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade for science release. But a lot of them are not 1.0 positions. And so sometimes a lot of teachers are looking for a full-time 1.0 position, but a lot of the sites have a less than full-time position. So there might be some issues with helping to staff those, and also providing some support with the sites to maintain their science kits. There isn't a consistent way across the district where sites have a place to store their kits or a system to replace the supplies that get used during the year, and we're trying to help with that at the district level. And one of the biggest challenges, I think, with science instruction in K through 5 is just a big issue, I think, across elementary school, that there are not enough minutes in the day to cover all of the curriculum in math and English and history and science and PE and electives and all of that in the day. And so some of the subjects maybe don't get as much attention as they maybe should. And it's a big challenge, and I don't know what the answer to that is. So that's a brief look at elementary. And the board decided that we would just go right into middle school. All right. So in middle school, we are currently in the final year of a successful 3-year rollout of new curriculum to address and deliver next generation education. We started in 2015 with the 6th grade beginning to teach the new curriculum, and 7th grade followed the next year, and 8th grade is currently converting their curriculum and teaching the new NG standards this year. So by the end of this year, the middle school will be fully converted over, at least with new curriculum. There's still room to work on it, but it's good progress in middle school. We're using an integrated model of science that teaches earth, life, and physical a little bit in each grade level. Our core content is centered around the use of the FOSS Next Generation Science Kits for middle school, and sites all now own one or more of each of the kits that need to be taught in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And many of our teachers have had some training on the FOSS curriculum, and this year also, and last year, we were also trained in constructing meeting literacy strategies to help students better understand the content through reading and writing strategies. That's where middle school is currently at. And next steps on middle school are to further offer FOSS trainings for teachers that are new to the district or new to the curriculum. The teachers need a lot more collaboration time around best practices with the new curriculum. It takes multiple years to really get it to where it's kind of a good cohesive curriculum, and the collaboration in grade levels is really important for that. We want to further develop engineering design and human impact activities. Those are 2 new things in next generation science standards that are really important. The engineering design is built into a lot of the lessons. But we're looking at further developing some engineering design challenges, maybe across grade levels in the district. For example, having a rocket building challenge in 8th grade across the district because it ties in well with the curriculum that year. And also developing human impact curriculum. An example is the impact that humans are having on the environment and how that ties in directly with science. We need, this next comment is for kindergarten through 8th grade, to continue annual funding that's needed to purchase both equipment and consumable supplies, because the new curriculum is heavily focused on hands-on experimentation and on design challenges that require consumable materials to build things. And this is also the first year that the CAST, California State Science Test, is going to be delivered in its full version. The 5th grade test will cover the content taught in 3rd through 5th grade, and the 8th grade test covers the content taught in 6th through 8th grade. And that also laps over into the high school as well.
And I just want to really quick, and Debbie and I had a very interesting conversation this morning. In our previous conversation on NGSS, I think a few board members asked about environmental topics and things of that nature. And I think if you take a look at the human impact standards and curriculum, there's really a lot of exciting opportunity to address those things. Everything from environmental concerns to ethics around genetic research, things of that nature. And also the engineering design standards really give us a great opportunity to expand and make connections with contextualized learning and CTE. So there's really a lot of exciting opportunity in these standards in the development of the program.
And we've started touching on some of the engineering design and human impact, but that's something that we really want to further develop. One point that I just realized that I skipped over was, I think it's also important in the middle school to make sure we're making a connection to 5th grade on one end and to the high school and 9th grade especially on the other end, so that we're making a continuous curriculum across the schools.
So we're speaking to the high school implementation of NGSS, and we're in a first wave of our new sequence that we spoke about last year in front of the board. So we have 10 sections of 9th graders currently taking our Physics 1 course, which is a new course based on the NGSS. Our next thing on our to-do list is we've been currently working on chemistry and biology, integrating those standards into our old courses. And the main difference is that because the NGSS not only covers physics, chemistry, biology, it also covers earth and space, engineering, and all of that. So we need to fold earth science, space science, and engineering into our 3 core courses.
So we can go to the next slide.
Sure. No, there.
So in terms of the challenges that we have going forward, there's a couple of things that we need to do. One thing is that we've asked for release time for a chemistry coach who would have a .2 release. And what they'd be doing is working on assisting the entire chemistry team on NGSS-related curriculum, but mostly on promoting success for all students. Because what we want to have at the end of this NGSS transition is a program that works better for all kids. And we've already designed that into our physics program. Now we want to very consciously design that into our chemistry program as well. So we have a little job description for what that release period would be involved in the chemistry program. On top of that, we want to have a real focus for next year of working with our special education department and counseling department to make sure that this transition doesn't leave any kids behind. So we want greater levels of success for kids in special education, kids who are ASI 3+, and we'll be making efforts to do that. And we've already started that with a series of meetings this year. Next year is going to be a unique year in our program because we won't be teaching any biology at the regular level. We'll offer AP biology, there'll still be honors in anatomy, there'll be AP environmental science. But that, in a way, gives us an opportunity to really work on making sure that the new biology curriculum, which will be for juniors, is going to be organized, NGSS aligned and ready to go in 2019-2020. And that'll be the first year that we'll deliver that class. And so by 2020-2021, of course, adapting to NGSS is something that we'll be working on for the rest of our careers as we work on more inquiry into our program, more investigation, things like that. But the core of the NGSS transition should be pretty much complete at Berkeley High School by then.
Okay, so just to start off the discussion, we're going to be going down the line again. Director Alper, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I have one question at the K-5 and one about the high school. The quick question about the high school is, Are we having any trouble finding ninth grade physics teachers?
Our big challenge is going to be staffing our physics team for next year, for sure. We have between 4 and 5 of the 7 teachers who we'll need at the ninth grade level in place. So we're going to have to do hires, and that's going to be a challenge. So we have to work on that.
Okay. On the K-5, you mentioned the training that the teachers are going to get on the new curriculum. That's the science release teachers, right?
That is, yes.
Okay, so it's not the general
Because this
teachers.
is focused on 4th and 5th grade, and across the district we have consistent science being taught twice a week by 4th and 5th grade science release teachers. It would just be for them.
Okay. And it wouldn't be fair to ask you to comment on other proposals we've heard, but it would be, from what you've described, it seems to me it would be difficult to have that science taught in 4th and 5th grade half by a science release teacher and half of it by a classroom teacher.
You're saying that
if one of the preps was taught by a science release teacher and one of the preps was taught by the classroom teacher.
the idea with the preps is that it's 2 periods, well, 4 for across the board, but
The suggestion from the site is that the other time for rather than teaching that science content during a prep period by a science teacher, the classroom teacher, in conjunction with a science teacher, would teach it during the classroom teacher. So it wouldn't be during a prep period.
Well, right, but they would be making up the instruction of the prep period during the rest of the week.
Yeah, I mean,
that might be better answered by.
I think. Do you want to come up, Director?
Yeah. Go ahead, Maggie.
Yeah, that would be super difficult because the science teacher is charged with doing hands-on constructivist science using the FOSS kit, and it's not really possible to break that into 2 45-minute blocks. Yeah, it's not really possible to break that into 2 45-minute blocks. That's better done in a 90-minute block, but even if it had to be broken into 2 45s for the schedule, one person needs to deliver that curriculum and do it consistently.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Some ideas we're tossing around, but there's nothing in place, is that if there was going to be some sort of collaboration between the science prep teacher and the classroom teachers, that it's possible the classroom teachers could support what's going on in science with some literacy activities back in the classroom about what they're doing in their science labs. So there's still opportunity for collaboration and continued science in the classroom.
Great. Also, just a friendly reminder to try to keep this pretty on topic, tightly to NGSS, and not stray into other topics like prep periods. But moving on.
No, so this is just, thank you very much for the presentation. This is something I brought up before in terms of next generation science standards, and they've been seeing a lot of success for English language learners, for our science teachers to learn English language development strategies to incorporate in science. And that's where you're seeing more of the students who are English language learners flourish much more so in their development. Is there plans to, and that probably coincides with professional development in terms of what are we doing to support our science teachers, to have also those strategies in order to support our students? And that would be K to 12. Well, I know we're doing it with constructing meaning, but it's still English language learners, newcomers.
We can tag team, but I was thinking about constructing meaning immediately. We've done a lot of work with that in our department, specifically in conjunction with culturally responsive teaching. I just think that, I don't know, you want to add in? I mean, I just think that with the hours we've spent talking about developing academic language, looking at our texts, be it a graph, be it an equation, be it an actual book, and how can we improve access to that for ELs?
This looking at more in terms of the strategies it can use, and I know we're doing that with the high school, but the K to 8 in terms of those strategies and those skills.
And we're also, all the middle school science and math teachers this past year were trained in constructing meaning strategies, which I personally, as a middle school science teacher, have found super helpful in giving all the students access to the curriculum and also access in a way to explain and show what they've learned. It helps with their writing. It helps with reading strategies as well. And I think it works across ELD levels.
Just a quick question, does that help when you combine two, they're doing English, they're doing literacy and doing science in terms of the minutes? Is that allowable?
You mean the minutes in elementary?
Yes.
Well, it could, yes. There's some science curriculums out there that, not particularly FOSS, but that do try to have a literacy-based science instructional program. So that's one way that they look at combining it. I think what we've been doing in middle school with our constructing meaning training is use some of these within the FOSS curriculum and add our own pieces to it that are maybe sentence structures or frames to help the students express their learning. So I think it definitely helps, and there's opportunities for it to be developed in elementary. The elementary teachers were not trained in constructing meaning, but Maggie, you might be able to speak more to what kind of training they have had to support ELD.
Well, one thing we do want to be sure is that elementary kids have hands-on experience with science and that they are in those kits taking them apart and constructing science understanding in that way. And there is always a place to integrate reading, and some of our reading units through TCRWP are nonfiction, including text that is science-based. But we don't want to whittle away at the opportunity for little kids to actually get in there and work with those hands-on kits.
So first of all, middle school sounds amazing, and I'm really excited to see where we're going with high school. K through 5 is the one that seems to me like it's developing, and I think the part of that is because we haven't even had the opportunity to have released teachers in science until now, so I think that's kind of to be anticipated. I do have a question, Pasquale, do you have any thoughts about providing more direction to the sites regarding science instruction, that there be at least one prep period for science or two? No, I actually thought we were saying there would be two. I thought that was where we were, but.
Yeah, actually, Judy, we have had science release teachers for quite some time.
For 4th and 5th?
Yeah.
Right, no, I'm talking about 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
And we are increasing prep in those areas, and some sites are increasing science prep, but one of the biggest obstacles that we face is getting the NGSS science materials for K-5, and that's an enormous investment, and that's what we're working on. That will help us be able to reach NGSS standards.
But I think your question is more in the direction of would we become more prescriptive with science time in grades 1 through 3? And I think it's premature for me to.
I know I'm a little off, but I just, in order to find out how we're able to provide this to our kids with any kind of fidelity, it seems important.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that will be a discussion. This year we've given a choice. We're looking at 2 PE and then a science or an art music and then an open choice. We're going to have some schools that are going to choose to do 1 or 2 periods. Although we have at least one school that's choosing to do multiple science preps, 2 science preps, yeah. So I think it's in our interest to kind of look at how that evolves over the year and then kind of double back and see how the curriculum develops. I do think, though, that the issue you raised, Vice President Pell, is one that we have to resolve at some point if we're going to do any serious global planning with the curriculum. So it would have to be revisited at the bargaining table and several other places.
Okay, so thank you, because I love our kids having science instruction outside of the classroom. I mean, not from the classroom teacher, because they're already, I think, tapped to do that. So so that all sounds very promising. And then I did have a question across the board. I know you referenced this about the sustainability, and I guess I am curious to know, as you've been developing the curriculum or even in the implementation of the FOSS in 4th and 5th, how much are we integrating sustainability and environmental science into the curriculum? And are you guys working at all with the sustainability group that Susan Silber is putting together?
So environmental science, I think, pops up a lot in all of the life science curriculum throughout, so they're definitely getting access to life science type content all the way through the schools. I definitely met with Susan a few times, and I'm very interested in collaborating with her, assuming that plan goes forward and the district gets behind it, with having curriculum that goes along with any facilities changes that we make for sustainability, as well as procedural changes in how we handle waste at the sites and the food services and all that's possible from that plan, energy reduction, whatever it is, and having curriculum that goes along with it that we could develop as these things roll out. I'm very excited about it personally.
High school folks.
So at the high school level, there's a strong emphasis on understanding global climate change, and that manifests itself in the physics curriculum. You talk about the 3 kinds of heat exchange and things like that. It manifests itself in chemistry when you talk about carbon dioxide and the structure of different molecules, and then of course biology when you look at the impact of biodiversity. There are other issues as well that work as vertical themes that run throughout the NGSS. So I feel like that's pretty well covered. We've just started the process of working on the school on the district-wide sustainability program.
So one of you is on that committee, because they did just have their first meeting. So I just wanted to make sure that, seems like it would be really important to have.
We missed the first meeting. So,
but you are hooked in. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's some science teachers there.
Yeah, I was at the first meeting, and I had met with Susan a couple of times prior to just start generating some ideas. And out of my work with her, we're looking at possibly in elementary school trying to look at the feasibility of having certain field trips across a grade level in elementary that takes them outdoors, specifically with a sustainability or nature-based focus.
Director Daniels.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple of quick questions that haven't already been covered. With respect to the physics for 9th grade, the reason that there will be no biology next year is because physics will be taught in 9th grade and 11th grade, right?
We have all of our 9th graders taking physics.
Yep.
And then we'll have 2 upper-level physics classes that juniors and seniors can take.
That's right, but no biology because...
And I sort of misspoke. Really not juniors, really seniors. When our kids work their way through chemistry and biology, then as seniors they can take physics again.
Gotcha.
But why not next year? Why no
Biology.
bio next year? Because you can explain this better.
Because like it's like the I don't know.
The transition.
It's because chemistry is taught in the 10th grade, so we have half our kids taking bio this year as 9th graders, and the other half taking physics, and all of those kids will move to chemistry, and no one will be in the 11th grade year yet, so we will not have 9th grade bio anymore.
Okay.
But if you're anticipating problems, there's no problem with staffing in terms of what we do with our biology teachers. The big problem is, can we be nimble enough to hire the physics teachers that we need?
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Wait, cool. I'd just like to...
Nicely said. Nicely said.
Okay.
You might
It's not, now it's going to be, I said biology is being eclipsed for the year. See? You oversold it, and then...
Okay. Moving on.
That was just a science nerd joke that you were like...
It wasn't that funny. Okay. So I'd just like to re-express my concern about hiring physics teachers, especially. I know that I have a lot of friends who are in physics this year, and I know that it's just been a pretty big problem this year. And also, I just have a quick point of clarification. So when this new biology class is like available for juniors, that would be available in addition to AP and IB bio. So all 3 of those would be offered as options.
So in the future, all 9th graders will have taken physics.
Right.
10th graders will take chemistry, and then 11th grade, there's a variety of biologies that are available. As senior electives, kids can, starting next year, take one of 2 AP physics classes. One is AP Physics 1, which is non-calculus based, and the other is Physics C, which is calculus based. And that is how it should work from then on.
Okay, but in terms of bio, there'll just be like AP, IB, and regular, and you can, I mean, I guess if you're an IB, you're going to be an IB, but you can opt into the regular or the upper level one?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Does anyone else have any final points or final questions? Director Alper?
No, I've been chastised by the president, so I'm good.
Okay. So I guess if nobody has anything else to say, thank you guys so much for presenting. And we will move on to our last item, which is the update on professional development for certificated teachers. So I'll turn it over to the assistant superintendent to introduce this. Associate something? Associate Superintendent Scuderi.
Thank you.
And thanks again to all the science stuff. So similar to the structure of our update on the implementation of the next generation science standards, we have a core group of folks here tonight to give you, again, a comparable update to the professional development focus at K5, K8 really, and also at the high school. So we have with us, I'll let folks introduce themselves rather than going. So we have, I'll introduce Maggie, who can introduce the rest of the folks.
Good evening.
On mic.
I'd like to introduce Susanna Reed, who is the Professional Development Coordinator for TK8.
And Karen Zapata is here from Berkeley High School. She's one of the professional development leads at Berkeley High School.
Good evening.
This late in the evening, we are hoping for some kind of like video or like animation. I'm just kidding.
Sing some songs.
Movement.
Do you just press forward? Okay. All right. Okay. So these are our 3 LCAP goals. LCAP Goal 1, to provide high-quality classroom instruction and curriculum that promote college and career readiness with academic interventions in place to eliminate barriers to student success. LCAP Goal number 2, to end the racial predictability of academic achievement by ensuring that all systems are culturally and linguistically responsive to the needs of our students. And LCAP Goal 3, to ensure all school sites have safe, welcoming, and inclusive climates for all students and their families, so that students are in their classes ready to learn.
Sorry, the mics are weird. I think they both need to be turned on for them to sound normal.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
And so our professional development focus relates to all 3 of these LCAP goals. So starting with K5.
Wait, it's weird again.
Don't touch yours.
Don't touch yours. Ms. Zapata, could you turn yours on? Okay, wait. They're both on?
Is that okay?
Oh, no, turn the other one on.
Okay, try it again.
Yeah, okay.
How about now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So our focus this year in English Language Arts, we started off our year with our new teacher training for our ELA program, Teachers College Reading and Writing Project for K5. All new teachers were taught, were trained in the program, the workshop model, including the mini lesson, shared reading, independent reading, guided reading, as kind of like an introduction to our district for new teachers coming in. This year we did model literacy classrooms for new and new to grade level teachers. So if a teacher switched grade levels, they were offered a chance to do a lesson observation and debrief with a veteran classroom teacher at that grade level, looking at the workshop model in both reading and writing. Our teachers who had been previously trained in reading recovery, they attend a monthly PLC with our reading recovery teacher leader to really look at progress of students with reading recovery, and they bring students behind the, what they call behind the glass, and watch a student read and then analyze what kids are doing to improve their practice in teaching reading. And currently we're working on implementing a structured literacy program, and it's in development to include a very systematic phonics program, K5 or K3 or K2 in Berkeley. And we're currently piloting 3 different programs at, I think every elementary school is piloting some of the programs currently. For ELD, English Language Development, this year, K5, we've had systematic ELD training for our ELD teachers, and we had an ELD training for literacy coaches and RTI teachers to examine the new ELD standards and to talk about task analysis for language production, as well as trying to train teachers to be gain expertise in the integrated ELD model for elementary school, so that we're having designated ELD time where students are pulled out of class to work on specific goals, but also that classroom teachers are continuing to use integrated ELD strategies throughout the day to support students. In math, once again, we had our new teacher training for math at the beginning of the year, teaching a story of units, or Eureka Math, to teachers new to the district. We also had math model classrooms for teachers who were new to the school district or new to the grade level. At our big PD day on January 29th, we had a focus of math instruction. We had a re-engagement workshops for a story of unit that were divided by grade level for grade level K-5, and they were led by our math teacher leaders. We also had the Silicon Valley Math Initiative come and do workshops in the afternoon, focusing on two strategies, something called 3 reads, where students are really deeply looking at word problems and learning how to solve word problems, and also working on, number talks. That is it. On number talks. In science, we have our wonderful TSA, Debbie Linz, who you just heard from, and she's been running collaborations for science release teachers as well as for science teacher leaders to meet and collaborate on NGSS standards. For middle school and English language arts, it's a big lift this year. We have our new curriculum, Inquiry by Design. We started the year with training from Inquiry by Design. They gave training on the micro courses. I think the first 2 micro courses they gave training on. We've had 6 very successful peer learning labs, which is kind of like a lesson study. Teachers come together. Teachers come together to watch a teacher teach a lesson that has been coached by people from Inquiry by Design. And then there's a pre-briefing and then a debriefing to talk about what's working, what's working, and where people want to go with the curriculum. We have a 6 through 8 ELA instructional coach this year, and his focus has been on coaching and coordinating and supporting middle school teachers in Inquiry by Design. Once again, in science, there's been a lot of collaboration with our FOSS kits and trainings from FOSS as well. For middle school math, this year we sent one of our coaches to the middle school coach to the SVMI, the Silicon Valley Math Institute, Summer Institute for Coaching. Our TSA for math also had early back days, summer workshops where teachers came back and did some pre-planning for the year. And he is also leading math scoring days where it's 3 per year per grade level. And he runs a PLC where they look at the assessments and then score them and then get a chance to really look at what students are doing and make pedagogical decisions about what they're going to do next based on what they're talking about. We've also done a 5-day constructing meaning training this year. And we trained about 25 math and science teachers over the 5 days. And that is the integrated ELD model that they were discussing earlier with the science as well. Instructional technology has played a big role this year as well. With our instructional technology coordinator and our instructional technology TSA, there's been a lot of integration of instructional technology into the content areas with coaching, both people going out and coaching, both people going out co-teaching, offering quick shops in the afternoon so teachers can come and learn to use a tool and learn to see and use how it could be used in their content areas that they're teaching. K-8, so this is what's happening, K-8 in terms of culturally responsive teaching and other things. We completed the second Cultural Competency Foundational Academy with Pamela Harrison Small. There was a summer one, a winter one, and a spring one is coming at the beginning of April. These deal with implicit bias, with equitable teaching practices as well. We also have equity teacher leaders, that's K-8 as well, and we have monthly collaboration meetings, and their job is to go back to their sites and provide professional development on our equity strategies, high help, high perfectionism, opt-in, bringing students' lives into the classrooms, and multiple perspectives. For social emotional training, this year, our October 9th PD Day really focused on social emotional learning. We had a keynote from Dr. Joyce Dorado from UCSF, and we offered workshops that integrated lots of social emotional learning into lots of different content areas. We had toolbox trainings, we had trauma-informed teaching trainings, we had SEEDS trainings, restorative practices trainings, and PBIS trainings as well at that day. Instructional technology integrated into the content areas as well. Teacher leaders meet monthly to collaborate and then bring ideas back to their sites. Another big piece of coaching this year, or a piece of professional development this year, has been the Art of Coaching and PD That Changes Practice workshops by Elena Aguilar, who wrote the Art of Coaching book, and her associates, and they've come out and they've trained our RTI teachers, they've trained our ELD teachers, they've trained our literacy coaches, and they've trained, and principals as well. And a lot of that focus is really learning to be instructional coaches to make shifts in Tier 1 instruction, because we know that Tier 1 instruction, first instruction, is best instruction for students.
So I'm going to talk about the high school focus, and then these are the 3 LCAP goals that were.
I just put those into reset so we can. You don't have to
the
repeat
next
them
one.
again.
Okay, so as you can see, the last slide actually in the LCAP goals talks about climate, and that's kind of a great segue to talking about professional development at Berkeley High. Climate is such an integral part of professional development. It's such an integral part of the classroom. And what we are using at Berkeley High is this garden metaphor. And the image communicates the instructional framework that we've developed. This is a poster that's in all classrooms. And at the center of the metaphor, at the center of the image, is a plant. And the plant represents the student. And the student is in a rich soil. The student has these amazing roots that dig deep into the soil. And behind the student is a scaffold or a trellis. And that represents the instructional scaffolds, the instructional supports that we provide so that the student can grow. So we recognize the classroom as a climate. It's a complex place. And this complex visual metaphor communicates the complex change work that we're doing at Berkeley High. So the 2 initiatives that we have undertaken and are deep in are on the 2 sides of the graph, or the chart there. On one side, we have culturally responsive teaching. We're in our 2nd year of this CRT initiative. And on the right is constructing meaning, and this is roughly the 7th year of constructing meaning. The staff has been introduced to an implicit bias framework, and also been part of workshops that that introduce them to microaggressions and have them have a deeper understanding of microaggressions. And this is all so that teachers can get into a questioning and reflecting stance on our own practice. And so that we are creating conditions so that teachers look at the way that they show up in the classroom, the way unconscious bias may take place in the classroom, and have an effect on student experience and student outcomes. And so this looks like our inquiry cycle. It looks like our equity strategy cards that we brought last year to you all. Different types of data we're using, so large grain data like SBA test scores, as well as small grain data, which are participation trackers, for example. And lastly, constructing meaning. We have refreshed the staff on the CM lesson process, which is a backward mapping process. And teachers have been trained on, or refreshed on structured student talk to scaffold difficult texts. So this is all to provide students with the academic language necessary for their success, for accessing the language of power. And lastly, this is through a 5-day training as well as teachers CMifying, quote unquote, their lesson components in their adult learning spaces.
President Nagarajan Swenson, I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting to 11:10.
Second.
Any objections? Oh, okay. Any objections? Okay, cool. The meeting's going to be extended until 11:10. We will start. I don't have any comments on this. Director Daniels, would you like to comment?
Well, this is really impressive, and I'm just really excited to see the depth of this and the thoughtfulness behind what you're doing, and particularly the work that's going on with culturally responsive teaching at Berkeley High. You know, I'm a big believer in climate and culture and impacting the impact it has on learning. So, it's really exciting to see that it's so focused. So that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you. PD is so important to our teachers and to our school in terms of the continuity and the connection from the preschool all the way up through the high school. So this is the best piece, I think, in terms of our schools and what we can do to improve and meet our goals. But I started to look at what BSEP funds in terms of our professional development, and there's some SMART goals there that we mentioned in that. Have we met those goals in terms of teachers participating, 60 teachers participating in literacy or have we met our goals in terms of what we attempted for this year for this school year, I think, for 18-19 or 17-18?
Well, in terms of culturally responsive teaching for K-8, we're closing in on them. We're going to be having our third cultural competency foundational academy in April. And right now we have 20 teachers enrolled. The goal is 30, and then that would give us 90 teachers trained this year.
We're exceeding our goal. Good, good. That's
Two questions. Thank you for this. Thank you for being here so late. But it's such an important topic. So on the culturally responsive teaching, it's sort of following on Director LeConte's question. How many? It seems like all the teachers should have this training. So, but they don't, right? How is it voluntary? I should know this, but is it voluntary? How do we decide who gets it? How is the goal to have everybody get it?
Yeah, the goal is definitely to have everybody go through the training. It's a little difficult just because of the lack of substitutes and other logistical problems. And that's not to say that there might not be some folks who are a little resistant to that kind of work. But we are closing the ranks on it. And I think that we are close to, we probably only have maybe 50 or 60 folks who we haven't put through the training to date, once this April one's closed out.
K-8?
K-8, yes.
K-8. And then at the high school?
At the high school, all teachers are part of culturally responsive teaching. They've all been exposed and introduced to the implicit bias framework, work on microaggressions, and it is very personal and it's very difficult work and it's really important. So we're really excited. We're in our second year of the initiative.
That's great.
And I would just add, Ty, that in addition to the Cultural Competency Foundational Academy sites themselves, pretty much all of our sites are doing additional work, quite a bit of work, whether it's reading a book by Zaretta Hammond, or all of the principals are reading Push Out, the Criminalization of Black Girls in Schools. And so every site is working also on equity initiatives, some led by the equity teacher leaders, some led by the district office, some led by the principal.
Great, thank you. And then I know that there's only so much PD time, but I think we've talked before about classroom management, and I just wonder if, is that on the horizon? Are there plans to include that in PD?
And on one of our staff development days, a lot of the workshops that Suzanne referenced were really related to classroom management in terms of trauma-informed practices, toolbox, PBIS, and we can close in a little bit more, probably more with new teachers on actual classroom management workshops. It's sometimes hard to find providers consultants who actually work on that, and so we usually rely on our own people to do that. But the October, was it the October or the January PD Day? Yeah, the October PD Day did have a focus on, I would call it classroom community building, understanding students, and how to address specific issues in the classroom. Yeah, de-escalation strategies.
Do we have any mechanism to provide release time for teachers to just sit in on sort of master teachers classes and watch either instruction or management that's really well done?
We can do some. We are a little limited by funding, but oftentimes schools themselves will find a way to release a teacher within the site so that they can go and sit in on another teacher's classroom to get that training. We also always have ongoing issues with getting substitutes, so there are some limitations to our ability, but sites do try to work with each other, and then new teachers, of course, work with our new teacher induction program as well.
But more importantly than just observing, it's that follow-up and that continuous practice, and that's an instructional coaching kind of piece where someone is coming and observing, and you're reflecting and you're growing from it as well too.
I think Director Daniels had a question then.
I just wanted to mention that I recently saw a program on trauma-informed care, and it was on 16 Minutes with Oprah. And one of the things that they were highlighting is that it was a whole school culture, the whole school practice, the teacher standing at the door, welcoming the children, greeting the children. That's what we don't have school-wide. You know, we do have, I know we have teachers who do that, but having a school-wide, that we all do the same thing and how we welcome our students into the room. And we greet them, we acknowledge them. So I thought it was a really important thing in terms of just making that eye-to-eye contact. Sometimes our students don't have that all day long.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you all for staying and for your work in this area. I guess a clarifying question and then maybe just a comment that you should feel no pressure to respond to. When we said that all teachers at Berkeley High are getting the sort of support around microaggression stuff, are we really talking all teachers, and how are we able to compel all teachers to come?
Well, these happen on all staff PD days, so these happened during the August, October, and November all staff PD days. So we trained over 250 folks. It included safety officers, it included instructional aides, and that was really intentional. We had to do a lot of work to make sure they were part of our crew, because they actually do a lot of teaching. Our support staff does a lot of direct teaching with young people, and that's not recognized. So that was actually really important to us, that it be a whole school. I mean, talk about whole school. There are so many teachers on our campus that aren't, per se, traditionally, traditional teachers. Our safety officers are absolutely teachers. And so, so we had a huge group of people that went through those modules with us around microaggressions. So it's yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my only a final comment for me, and again, you shouldn't feel pressure to respond, but obviously you're welcome to. Well, actually, maybe I'll phrase it as a question. So we've talked a lot about the content of what the PD is about, but could you talk a little bit more about the delivery process and the method? So whether it's instructional rounds or mentor teachers or coaching or PLCs, because I guess it's the better ways of doing PD are more expensive. So previously, I talked about, this idea of having new teachers at Berkeley High have 4 classes versus 5 and spend one of their 6 periods actually observing a master teacher. That's very expensive. We're talking, 1/6 new teacher, additional teachers, very expensive. I'm just curious to know sort of what our process has been. Has it primarily been one-off, or 2 or 3 off type trainings? Have we been able to find ways to do more ongoing, feedback loops, PDSA cycles, et cetera?
I would say we cover everything that you've mentioned. Sometimes we bring in outside consultants like the Art of Coaching, the Art of Coaching Teams, PD that changes practices, Pamela Harrison Small, those types of things. Sometimes our own people in our PD department, teachers on special assignment, are providing workshops. We work with consultants. We have the PLCs operating at the school site where they're doing ongoing PD. So I would say we pretty much cover all bases. Yeah.
Okay. And the PLCs are mainly at the elementary schools, right? They're not at the middle or
middle
high
school
school.
as well.
Middle school, but
and
not at
elementary.
Berkeley High or BTA.
I don't know about that.
And just one thing I wanted to say is the implicit bias work. We worked, and next year our focus is going to be on bringing that implicit bias work into the inquiry cycle. So really making sure that, because the inquiry cycle went throughout the year, it wasn't, like you said, the one-off trainings or workshops or modules, so that our work is to bring those questions about our stance and our unconscious bias and bring that into an inquiry, the inquiry cycle in general. And that's some ongoing work. That's really a lot of culture shift. So it's that questioning of our practice and putting that into an inquiry cycle has been.
Okay. I mean, yeah, because we're just to sort of echo that, we're talking about changing a school system or a district system, and that is oftentimes not successfully done by 1 or 2 or 3 trainings, although as important as those are to create sort of foundational basis of knowledge. And one of the most sort of effective system changes I ever saw was when our current associate superintendent was principal at Berkeley High. There was an effort to support shifts within one of the languages. And one of the ways it was reflected in how you saw the system shift was by looking at grading curves of teachers in this particular language. And you looked at before the effort and after the effort. And before the effort, they were all over the place. They were not at all aligned in any way. You'd have one, a lot of A's, one's a lot of F's, a U. And after the effort, 3 or 4 years later, almost every single teacher for this language had a bell curve. And that meant that there had been ownership and collaboration and true systems change within that department. And as I understand it, that success and that shift was done because of ongoing collaboration. So just to end on that positive note and offer that as an example for us all.
And one thing I might add that we don't usually talk about when we present to the board is we also do ongoing professional development for administrators. And your administrator is the instructional leader at the site. And investing in the administrator, whether it's with our weekly meetings, every single solitary week, or whether it's through various trainings that we offer for administrators, conferences, other types of ways that we get outside of the district and see what's happening in the rest of the world, that's one of our big investments in the people who are leading our schools.
Can I, Madam President? So, I mean, Josh's comment made me realize that I think all of you mentioned PLCs, or at least Ms. Reed, you mentioned PLCs, but I'm also curious to know how PLCs are kind of integrated into the PD framework, because I think that has been a significant development in the district, and I'm curious to know how effective you feel that it is. I can barely put a sentence together.
I think it's been extremely effective. Our schools are working in PLCs, and they might look a little bit different depending on the site and the leadership of the site, the leadership team, and how the PLCs are working through the school. But even in our meeting today, which was with an outside consultant on the Art of Coaching Teams, this was an administrative training, not just principals, but all of our administrators, TK8, pre-K8 actually. One of the big focuses was on PLCs, problem solving in PLCs. How are PLCs moving through your grade level teams, through your leadership team, through the RTI team, and what are you actually looking at? You're looking at how kids are doing and answering those big 4 questions. You're analyzing data, and you're making improvements to the instructional program. So I would say the PLCs have been highly successful, and that our charge is to keep the PLC going and to always keep retraining in the PLC to surface where there's issues, to bring new staff on board as we need to, and in that way to constantly re-energize people with those 4 big questions, because that's what it all comes back to, is how kids are actually doing and how we're responding to how they're doing. So I feel totally energized. Yeah.
And I want to add that I feel like our kind of big PD days should reinforce the PLCs, and that whatever we're kind of doing on these big foundational days, that is kind of wrapped into the cycle and given back to the site for ongoing PD. And it's kind of tricky because they kind of land at different odd times of the year, but I think it's workable, and I think we're getting better at it. I think as the year has gone on, we've found ways to say, okay, that was great at the PD day. Teachers are excited about SVMI. They're excited about these things. How can we keep this going at the schools? And our PD team has been great doing that, just keeping the conversation and the collaboration happening at school sites.
And one thing that I wanted to say is that at Berkeley High School, we are doing this sort of smaller version of a PLC, which is the inquiry cycle, and which is happening in our SLCs and our small learning communities. And we're going to send you all an invitation, but we're doing a learning showcase where all teachers talk about their inquiry cycle in cross grade level, cross SLC groupings, trios, on 4:30 on April 30th, and we'd love to invite you all to come and see and listen in on teachers talking about their questions, their inquiry, and what they learned. So those are the kind of learning opportunities that are happening within the PLC sort of quote-unquote model.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for such an extensive presentation and for all of the work you guys have done on this. Is anyone here for the second opportunity for public comment? Okay, so I guess yeah.
Extended comment. I just really wanted to thank you. You did an amazing job tonight. Yeah.
We're going to take some lessons from you, too.
Yeah, especially like...
I was going to thank you guys all for... Sorry. I was going to thank you guys all for giving me this opportunity. I've learned so much, and this has really been an invaluable experience for me. And so with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
4 more years.